with sadness. Maybe you have been drawn to this meditation because you're presently sitting with sadness. Gently close your eyes and let us sit with it together. Focus on not trying to hold your eyes closed, but letting them rest gently closed. Sometimes the sadness comes. It may be deep and rooted. It may build its home in your belly, your heart, your throat, or your crown. It may come from all of the things that we see that are unjust and unkind in the world. It may be that your heart is sometimes filled with a sadness that is beyond your comprehension. And it ebbs and it flows like a tide, linked to a moon that we don't quite understand. Wherever sadness comes from for you, we try to push it back there. We try to make it retreat and go away. If we ignore it, we hope it will dissipate. But sometimes we need to sit with sadness. We need to acknowledge it, recognize it, and say, "Hello, old friend. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for the lessons that you have taught me. Thank you for the ways in which you have opened my eyes and broken open the dam of my heart. Thank you for the ways in which you have forced me to see, to empathize, and to care." Sometimes we need to sit with sadness, to let it wash over us. Sometimes we need to ask sadness where it came from and ask it where it wants to go. Sometimes we need to sit with sadness, look at it head on, recognize how familiar it is, acknowledge it, and then ask for its retreat. Just like the tide, we have to ask it to ebb and flow, to greet the sadness and then to release it. Let the sadness go into the night, for when it visits us again, we can't fear it. Neither can we hold on to it. We can't hold on tightly to the sadness and let it become the reason. Let it become a focus of our lives that explain anger, mistrust, and fear. So today we are sitting with the sadness, letting it greet us, staying with it a while, and then releasing it. It may come again, for it has been with you for a long time and knows intimately the shape of your heart. But greet it as a friend when you see it again. A friend that can come and visit and can also say goodbye. As we sit here with our sadness together, I'd like for you to greet it as a friend, ask it where it came from, and ask it where it is going, telling it kindly that it does not live here. Hello, friend. Thank you for visiting. Where have you come from? Where are you going? Thank you for the lessons that you have taught me, the ways in which you've hurt, the ways in which you've pulled me to the depths of myself. I compassionately release you as you cannot stay here. You can use this practice to release more than just one sadness, because sadness takes so many different shapes. Hello, friend. Thank you for visiting. Where have you come from? Where are you going to? Thank you for the lessons that you have taught me, the ways in which you've hurt, the ways in which you've pulled me to the depths of myself. I compassionately release you as you cannot stay here. Take some time now to release the sadnesses you are feeling. Imagine that you are cutting ties with your sadness, pulling away the cords that have bound you two together, severing the ties and wrapping yourself in a warm and loving light. I'll give you a few moments now.
Hello, good morning, family. Oh my gosh. Happy National Grief Awareness. And I say happy because we are going to talk about all things grief today, but we also going to celebrate our loved ones that we are missing. When I tell y'all, I am so excited about today. And even with the recent death of my uncle that passed Wednesday night, this is for me. This summit is not just for y'all, it's for me. So I am so glad that you all are here today. I have some amazing speakers who have just really poured into us today and that are really going to make this event be just so amazing and just so great. And so in all that I do, I can't start anything without giving God his glory, his honor, and his praise. And so for those of you who want to, just join me for a moment in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I come to you today. Thank you so much for everyone who is here in this broadcast today, Father. We thank you so much that you have given us another day to give you glory and to serve you, Father. Father, I ask that you touch the hearts of those who are grieving, those of us who are still grieving behind our loved ones, those of us who are struggling with understanding grief, with how to reclaim joy. Also, those of us who are angry or struggling with forgiveness as it relates to grief. Father, I know that everybody that you have in this broadcast on today will be touched and who will see life very differently through grief. Father, thank you for my speakers. Thank you for my guests. And we ask all these things in your precious Son's name. Thank you, Lord. Amen. So thank y'all for that moment to be able to share. I am faith-based, so I don't ever apologize for that. However, we have to usher in God's spirit. So I am so excited that we get to spend a little time today to talk about grief. Now, I'm not going to tarry because my first speaker, this is my sister. I love her so much. She is such an amazing individual. And she is someone who herself has been living with grief as well. So without further ado, I am going to invite my sister to the stage. We'll be right back with you. Hello, beautiful lady.
Hello, gorgeousness. How are you on this amazing Friday?
Amazing Friday. I am so glad that you are here. Thank you for saying yes.
No, thank you for trusting me with such an important endeavor. You know, there are so many of us grieving. We don't know where to turn to. And I don't care how many books, how many speakers, how many presentations, how many this, how many movies, how many that. Sometimes it seems like it's just not enough.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, you just said a mouthful. So thank you so much. I will let you have the stage. I know you have a presentation, so I am so excited to hear this.
Awesome. Thank you. So let me go ahead and get it up for us. I'm going to share my screen here. And you know, it's so funny. So I work for the government. I'm not going to tell y'all what branch of the what sector I work in. However, they understand the importance of grief and how it impacts us all. So much so that when I said, you know what, I have an obligation that I need to meet and it's very important to me, my supervisor was like, you know what, let's get it done. What do you need? When do you need it by? So they shifted my entire schedule. My entire schedule so I can be here with my sister, Lakeisha. And you know what, I cannot stress the love that I have for you, because what you do and how much you pour out, and people don't understand. They see you and they think that you're happy and you up there all the time. You're on cloud nine all the time, but you are in the muck, in the trenches, and you're pouring out your soul and heart to others. And I love you for that.
Thank you. I love you too. Thank you.
All right.
I'm gonna leave the stage. The presentation is up, and I can't wait. Y'all make sure y'all taking notes.
Well, hello, everyone. Just a brief introduction. My name is Lorinda Andujar. I am a grief recovery specialist. I'm a certified John Maxwell speaker and coach. I am a mom, but most importantly, I am a human being that makes mistakes. I'm a human being that goes through loss. And when I heard about this conference and I heard about what Lakeisha was doing, I was like, you know what? Put me in, coach, because grief, you know, there are so many people grieving and we don't know how to express ourselves. We don't know how to talk about what's going on. We don't even know if there's a safe place. And the first thing that I thought about was good old Charlie Brown, you know, when things go wrong, the good grief, you know, but grief can really be good if we allow ourselves to submit to it. So that's what we're going to talk about. So let's talk about a grief story, because I know everyone in this room, everyone listening, everyone who will see this broadcast has a story. Everyone has a grief story. Everyone has gone through some traumatic experiences, tumultuous experiences. We are a nation of grievers. That's the Grief Institute, who has open my eyes to some of the misconceptions and things that are out there about grief and how we should approach someone who is dealing with grief. And I say this to you, when it comes to my grief, and this is specifically from me, I remember it like it was yesterday, and I feel it like it was a second ago. And that's a strong statement. But when it fell in my spirit, it just encompassed everything that I've learned about grief. And so without further ado, I remember that I was planning for my 50th birthday. and I was going to Africa. I was going to the motherland, and it was a family trip and my cousin's birthday. My mom was going to be there. I was going to share the room with my mom. We had our cousins, all of our family going on this trip. I was turning 50. My mom was rounding her 70th. My cousin was having her birthday, and I was going to Africa. I was so excited about it. And so, unbeknownst to me, my mom decided to go on a cruise before we went to our Africa trip. And this was in December, and she was coming to South Florida because my brother was having a set of twins, and we were all going to go to the baby shower, meet up, and have some fun. So we get a phone call from my brother, and he tells me, hey, mom is not answering the phone. Our other brother is there to pick her up, and I need you to try to get in touch with her. And so I had spoken to my mom a couple of days ago, and actually 2 days ago to be exact. And she said she wasn't feeling well. I said, Mom, get you some rest. I love you. And so now we're trying to get my mom on the phone, and nobody can get in touch with her. And it's not like her to not answer her phone. So then my brother calls me back, and he says, they told me that there was a medical emergency and mom is dead. I'm standing at the port at Fort Lauderdale waiting to pick up my mother, and they tell me that there was a medical emergency and she's dead. I feel that day today, just as much today as it was a year and a half ago. And sometimes I want to cry, sometimes I want to scream, I want to yell, things resurface, but that is the nature of grief. And I'm finally getting to a point where I almost feel like myself. I'm not actually getting triggered as much as I used to get triggered. And you know what? It would be all and well if that was the only grief event that I had in my life. But many of us have compounding grief, event after event after event. We have grief events that pop up. So the first thing that I want to talk to you today about grief is, let's define grief. What is grief? So Wikipedia, August 20th, 2024 said grief is the response to the loss of something deemed important. And I want you to remember something deemed important. It's deemed important to that person. So one of the things that I want to caution you before we start defining grief and speaking to others about their grief journey, it's something deemed important to them. It may not necessarily feel as important to us, but it is to them. And we can derail their healing if we say or do the wrong thing, particularly to the loss of someone or a living thing that has died, to which a bond or affection was formed. See, it's important to them because there was a bond or a connection, whether it was a pet, whether it was a job, whether it was a project that they worked so hard on that never came to fruition. Maybe it was betrayal, or it was something that happened and the bond was broken abruptly. And now here I am. And although conventionally focused on emotional responses to loss, grief has physical. I can feel pain in my body. I can feel like I'm having a heart attack. My bones can hurt. I can get physically ill. Cognitive. It can mess with the way that I think, the way that I move, my ability to process. Behavioral. This part gets me right here every time. Because when we suffer a loss, people think that we're supposed to be, oh, I'm good. Yes, okay. Yeah. But I can't tell you the amount of times that somebody coined me crazy right after my mom died because I was having behavioral responses to my grief. Social. Sometimes people ostracize us, or we ostracize ourselves. We seclude ourselves because we don't want to deal with people. We don't want to talk about the grief because we don't understand what's going on. We're still trying to process it. Cultural. So there's different, things that go on through the cultures that define how we respond to grief. Spiritual. We say some things as spiritual people, and I'm not even going to tell you, what, they're in a better place now. No, they're not. Their better place was with me at the dinner table, talking about our day, or arguing, or just looking at each other and smiling at each other, or just being in peace. and philosophical dimensions. So grief defined is a response to the loss of something deemed important, which there was a bond that is no longer there. So hopefully everybody understands grief a little bit better now. And so remember I said compounding grief. There are so many things that we go through in a week, maybe, and it'll trigger how we respond to certain things. So, I can tell you that in a short period of time, I lost a child. My daughter passed away. I was pregnant with my daughter. I miscarried her. I carried her full term, and I still count birthdays to this day, and she would be 21 years old. I still wonder, what could I have done differently? I've suffered, family losses back to back to back to back. I've been through 2 reorgs, and you talking about sting, you go through and you work for an organization, you give it your all, and you sacrifice, and then it's no longer there. So what do I do now? Especially if you're an older individual and you are still, you have your life planned up. I'm going to work to this age, and then I'm going to go and then now everything is shifted. There's betrayal, there's infidelity, there's mobility, loss of your mobility, loss of limbs, layoffs, health, financial, moving, kids having to switch to another school, missing opportunities, foreclosures. But the list can go on and on, which grief events can impact people. So my hopes is that at the end of this presentation, you think a little bit differently about grief, how you react to grief events. What are your triggers? What are some of the things that you've dealt with that you were like, oh my God, I was actually grieving. And believe it or not, grieving is not always a loss. You can have grief from things that you've never experienced. Like say you go to a friend's house and you see how loving their parents are to each other. Mom and dad are loving to each other. The siblings get along. There's no sibling rivalry. There's nothing amiss in that household. So it seems, and you never got to experience that. Maybe you were put up for adoption or you were in the foster home environment. You never experienced that. And then speaking of foster home environments, as bad as a home situation is to a child at times, it's the only situation they know, and they can grieve the loss of a parent even when they're taken out for good reasons. So we really need to rethink the things that we say, how we interact with people, what's going on, because everyone, I promise you, and we all know this, and everyone on this line can attest to, everyone is fighting a battle that no one knows about. I come in and I'm I got my makeup on, I'm looking good. You think everything is going well in my life. I'm a 8-time working on my 8th book project. So I got a lot of things going on, and people look at my life from the outside, but they don't understand what it costs to be me. People don't understand what it costs to be you. And yet they walk around haphazardly throwing insults and accusations at people, not knowing that can be the straw that breaks Campbell's back. So when we deal with grief, when we think we know how to approach it, maybe we need to slow down, pump the brakes, and put ourselves in their shoes. And sometimes that's not even the best thing to do, because the way that we deal with grief may not be the way that somebody else deals with grief. So far, we have defined grief. We've talked about my grief story, and I know you're probably playing some of your grief stories back in your head right now. And let's get a little bit deeper in this, right? So let's talk about the 7 stages of grief. So, there's so many different ideologies out there about what grief is and what grief isn't. There's, the 5 stages of grief, but the one that I really focus on is Elizabeth Kubler's, the 7 stages of grief. And now we're going to look at the alternative model, because it may be a little bit different than what you've seen previously, but grief is grief, no matter where you go, no matter who you talk to. We all experience at least 1 or 2 of these symptoms, if not all. And then we may have to revisit some of these symptoms, because it's not a one and done. It's not you go through denial and shock and then you're over denial and shock and you've graduated and matured to college, university of pain and guilt. It doesn't work like that. Grief is a cycle. And it can be a vicious cycle if we don't understand our triggers and understand our emotions and understand how to maturely navigate the waters of grief when we're dealing with others, because intentionally or unintentionally, we can bleed onto someone else, and that can actually have very adverse effects for their lives, right? So one of the quotes that Lakeisha had up that I loved on the graphic was, "To live with grief is to learn to live with a broken heart." Over and over. I'm going to add another over again. So it's not a one and done. So our healing is not going to be a one and done. It takes a conscious effort, a concerted effort to heal and get to a place where you feel semi-normal. And I say semi-normal because you may never get to a place where you're all roses and sunshine. You may smell a perfume that smelled like the person's perfume, or hear someone say a statement that they said, and it may take you back to step one and you're back into shock and denial. So the 7 stages of grief are denial and shock, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more in some of the statements that you may hear. Pain and guilt, anger and bargaining. Let me tell you something. I lived, built a house in, stood on business in my anger when my mom passed away. And I was angry at everyone. I was in a bad and dark place. Depression, I made a bed in depression. I wove a dark blanket and snuggled deeply in it. And I know many of you have seen these, and you didn't know what you were going through. You didn't know how to express what you were dealing with. But it wasn't until I attended the Grief Recovery Institute, when I thought I was this really great listener and I thought I had all the answers, and I attended the Grief Recovery Institute to find out that, you know what, I need to be big ears with a little mouth and an even bigger heart. Because sometimes there are just no words. We want to fix things, but these people aren't broken, they're hurting. We're going to talk about reconstruction, the upward turn after the depression. We're going to talk about reconstruction and working through it. It's just that, rebuilding yourself. That's where you have to be very careful and mindful of who is in your circle, who is in your ear. And then on to hope and acceptance. So let's get into it, folks. Shock, disbelief, and denial. And some of the things that you may hear when thinking about shock: I can't believe this is happening. What? And maybe all they say is, what? I mean, how? I mean, I just talked to him last week. I had just talked to my mom 2 days ago. Or they may just do nothing. Everything stops. They were a go-getter. They were the life of the party. They were attending events, throwing events, hosting. They were doing it all. And then all of a sudden, nothing. Avoiding people, avoiding circles. I'm going to tell you, when I'm struggling, when I'm going through something, and I know that somebody is, a little bit overwhelming, shall I say, I will avoid them altogether, just to keep my peace so that I don't spiral back into the dark place. And then the feeling of numbing, the feeling of nothingness. I remember when I got the call that I was laid off from my organization that I had worked 27 years for. And then one day you called me and said, I don't have a job. And I didn't feel bad. I didn't feel good. I didn't cry. I didn't do anything. I just felt numb. I was just like, oh, okay. And so there are so many emotions, that shock, that disbelief, that denial, this can't be happening, replaying it in your head, trying to figure out where it went wrong. If I avoid it, it didn't happen. If I don't say it, it didn't happen. And that's why we are so afraid of saying the word, I cannot believe she died, or I cannot believe she is dead, or I cannot believe he is no. We go all the way around the word death and dying. We come up with all these acronyms and things that we can say to not say the word death, not to say the word dying. So one of the things that I do with my children now, I'm not going to be here always. One day mom's going to die, and I need you to be okay. I need you and your brothers to be a support system for each other. I need y'all to be a tight-knit unit. I need you to be better than me when it comes to these situations. I need for us to plan. I need for us to talk about life insurance, burial insurance, and things like this, so that I'm not trying to spend my time while I'm still in a state of shock, a state of disbelief, I'm denial, everything that's happening. And now I'm having to plan a funeral and people think I'm going to be okay. I don't want my children to go through that. And if that's something that you haven't planned, you might want to start thinking about that. You might want to start having those conversations so it can shorten the lifespan of their grief. Not to say that it's going to take the sting away from it, but they can move on quicker. Pain and guilt. I should have taken the time off to go on cruises with my mom. And I can't tell you how many times I was trying to meet a goal. And my mom, she kept asking me, hey, let's go to Germany together. Let's go to Hawaii. I was like, Mom, I got to work. I got to pay these bills. The kids need school clothes. They need this. They need that. I just can't do it right now. And at that moment, she went on a cruise alone and she died. My son, 17 at the time, he wanted to, he was like, I asked him, did he want to go to Thanksgiving dinner? And he was like, well, I kind of want to stay home. And the first thing that he brought up, man, I should have went to grandma's house because now I can't even have Thanksgiving with her. And it's small things like, I want my mom's fried chicken and I can never have that again. I can come close because I cooked somewhat like she cooked, but it'll never be my mom's. It'll never be the love that she poured in it. To be yelled at. My mom had this thing is, I fail to understand why these lights are on. I fail to understand why that door is open and you letting all my cold air out. What I wouldn't give to hear her say, I fail to understand one more time. Even in a situation where somebody's going through a divorce, people call them crazy all the time. You know what? You're stronger than that. There's someone right now grieving a toxic relationship because that was all they knew. As painful as it was all they knew. I should have visited more. I should have told them I loved them. Can't tell you how many times if I just had one more time to hear their voice. If I just had one more time to go and visit them. I should have stopped them from going or doing such and such. The pain and guilt that people experience in loss, there are no words for it. There's no meter that can gauge it. So those are some of the statements that you may hear if you're stuck in the land of pain and guilt. Remember when I told you in the beginning, I lived in anger? When I tell you I lived in anger. So what I found out was, during that transition, my mom didn't even feel well when she drove from Clearwater to Fort Lauderdale, which is a 4-hour drive. And I'm mad because I didn't even know she was going on a cruise because she knew my mouth. I would have been like, no, Ma, you're not going. You're not doing this. I was angry because I couldn't tell her that. And so I acted out. I had extreme irritability. I didn't even want to talk to people because I was like, why would you let her go knowing she felt this way? But they couldn't control her. I was misplacing my anger on someone else. A continued obsession about why and what happened. I didn't like the way that she didn't have an autopsy. It happened out at sea. So there's maritime laws and different things that if they're over 5 miles out from sea, the regular police, the coroner, there are certain things that they can't do. They can't touch it. You have to get a maritime lawyer. And sometimes those are hard to get when you're dealing with this. And that was a tipping point for us. I wanted to know what happened and other people wanted to let it go. A growing anxiety of fear and loss. So now I'm like, my mom died on a cruise. I don't necessarily want to go on a cruise because I don't want to have that memory. And Cruise ships are huge. What would be the likelihood that I would end up in the same room on the same cruise in a room that she was in? That's far to none, slim and far to none. But I had that anxiety and that fear that, okay, who else lost a loved one here? Behavioral overaction. I'm gonna tell you, I went from 0 to 4,000 real quick. And so I overreacted to things. I placed a lot of blame on people. I placed a lot of blame on myself. I got quiet. I got to a place where I was like, I don't want anything. You have it all. You do whatever you want to do. And then I got upset because I felt that people were just taking advantage, and I'm looking out for everybody else, but I'm getting the blame. And then going into those grief moments, you find out the family secrets that nobody talked about because it was a hush hush. And now it's open season, and it was open season on me. So I was angry, and I had people, posting things and making accusations, and people who wanted to believe it, believed it. But I stayed quiet because I knew the truth. And it didn't stop my love for anyone, but I found out some things that we could have talked about, we could have squashed. And we didn't do that. And when I tell you I lived in anger, I lashed out. The person I lashed out at the most, though, was myself. And then I saw some traits that I may have had some possible addictive and self-harming behaviors. No, I didn't go out and do drugs and all these other things, but I did drink a lot. I did start partying a lot. I got most of my tattoos during that time. But there's a lot of different things. I had a loss of control of thoughts and actions. I couldn't think clearly. We talked about the physical, the psychological things, the emotional things, the stressors and things that happen when you're going through this grief cycle. I built a 2-story, 3,000 square foot home on anger. And I was like, well, if I did this, she wouldn't have went. I started bargaining with myself. If I would have shown her more attention. And then I felt the need to have to clarify when somebody was telling me how much time I didn't spend with my mom. I knew how much time I spent with my mom. I just didn't tell everybody else. I didn't go to see everybody else. But that was a problem. And there was a time in that anger that it was the first time my siblings and I argued. The first time my siblings and I fought. And I was just going on. I was 49 the first time I had an argument with my siblings. We didn't do those things. But death brings those things out. Grief brings those things out. When I told you it got dark, I love this graphic because it says so many different things. It screams so much. And I particularly love the eye that is white. It looks just like the person is possessed. Lorinda, do you like possession? No, I don't. But this speaks to depression. It speaks to how lost you are. It speaks to how you walk through life zombified, how you cannot process anything and nobody understands. Everybody says, you know what? I've been through it. I understand. No, you can relate potentially, but you don't understand my grief journey. You don't understand my emotions. You don't understand that I cannot even put a name to this. Why are you trying to put a name to this? No, I am not broken. I am not. There are so many different things that just had me overwhelmed. And it was, like I said, it was very dark. But you know what? I want you to think about film. The development of pictures. They happen in the darkness. And it was part of my journey. And so all of those things were bubbling up to the surface. I had sadness. I started sleeping all day. I wasn't eating properly. The loss was really setting in, and I just kept dwelling on things. And there was nothing I could do about it. And nobody understood from my perspective, even though we were all going through the same thing and losing the same persons. So this is where I want to press pause and say, have you sought professional help? And there are so many stigmas out there that in our community, and I'm just going to speak about my community. I'm going to speak from a spiritual community. Give it to God and leave it alone. You can give it to God and go give it to the psychiatrist too, or the psychologist too. You can give it to God and go take medication. There's so many ways that people grieve, and there's, you know, so many caveats to each stage of grief that will never touch the bottom of grief, even when it takes us to the bottom. But then eventually you see that upward turn. And so you may not have fully accepted the loss, but you know, I can't just lay here and die. And your emotions, they start to level out. I'm not saying that you feel 100% better. I'm just saying you can put your foot on the floor and you can stand up without your knees buckling in that moment. Not to say that tomorrow you may not have a bad day, or a year from now you may not have a bad day with the anniversary of it, but your emotions start to level out. And I started wearing makeup again. I started getting massages. I started going on road trips by myself. I started going to the beach and watching sunsets. I started listening to music. I started writing again. Matter of fact, I'm writing a book right now. It's on, my grief journey. And I put it down for almost a year because I couldn't bear to even type a word. And it gets like that sometimes. But I'm finally getting to a place where I can speak about it freely without being triggered. And that's where we're all going to go if we allow ourselves to walk through, sometimes crawl through, limp through our grief journey at our pace, not someone else's. And then at this point, I started getting somewhat social. I had trusted figures in my life, not people that was going to tell me what I wanted to hear, but people who understood the grief journey, people who understood who I was before this incident, and who wouldn't hold me and nail me to the cross because I acted out. People that stood up and said, you know what, you need to really mind your business. This is not your place to talk about what's going on with her right now. Because when you go through grief, people tend to forget all the great things that you do, your great personality. They just see you as this monster that's, lashing out at everyone. They're not trying to get to the bottom of why you're doing the things they do. And it's not only death. Remember, any loss, any significant loss, and a break of a bond that was deemed important to that person. But we can all get to that upward turn. And if you are going through your grief journey right now, I cannot wait for you to go to the upward turn. And then you get to start taking the blocks and building them up and working through the grief. And this is reconstruction is where you really start to focus on your healing. And I love this quote by George Eliot. It says, she was no longer wrestling with the grief, but could sit down with it as a lasting companion and make it a sharer in her thoughts. That doesn't mean that I'm going to keep revisiting the bad moments. I'm going to think about what good came out of this, how I can help someone else, how, even if I'm not physically helping someone else or doing this, how I can be more kind to someone who is experiencing a loss, whether it's an animal, a job, moving, finances, mental mobility, a divorce, a breakup, a toxic relationship, no matter what it is. I can start building myself up. I can start looking at myself in the mirror and say, you know what, it's okay. Today it's okay. Tomorrow it may not be okay, and that's okay too. But I start seeking out health counselors and doctors and advocates who can assist me in my journey. This is where I really start working through the process, laying it out, thinking about what transpired. It's no one's fault. It happens. and making peace with myself. Again, I'm not there yet. I'm not walking on cloud 9 yet, but I'm getting there. And each day that I intentionally focus on my healing is a good day, whether it's a bad day or not. So there are so many misconceptions about grief. Grief isn't a big deal. You can just get over it. I can't tell you how many times. You still grieving? You know, that happened 20 years ago. You still talking about that? They haven't had an outlet. They haven't had a safe circle. They haven't had a place, or maybe they haven't had the resources to deal with that grief. We're still dealing with generational trauma that has happened years and years and years. There's a black sheep in every family. And that's the person that is probably going to be the one tasked with breaking the grief cycles in their families and teaching everybody how to treat them, teaching everybody that, you know, it's okay to not be okay. Not everyone grieves the same. Not everybody deals with the same thing. To relate, to not place yourself in their shoes, because it's their shoes. They got to walk that walk themselves. You can't fix it for them. And the stages of grief, they say the stages of grief never recycle. I'm one and done. I did 1, I did 2, I did 3, I did 4, I did 5, I did 6. Oh, I'm getting to the last step, and you're right back at stage 1. There are 16 ways people grieve, and I'm going to share this PowerPoint out. Feel free to share it, to look over it. But look how many different types of grief there are. Normal grief, the emotional distress that accompanies a trauma. There's so many different traumas out there that we're dealing with, that we put a name on everything. Complicated grief, the type of grief that worsens over time. Traumatic grief, you have anticipatory grief. You knew it was coming, but you still, even if you know that someone has stage 4 cancer, you never fully fathom them not being there with you one day. So there are so many different types of grief that we really can't get into today, but I just wanted to show you this to say, you know what? It's not simple, but we can take a simple approach to understanding it. And then finally, we get to good grief, acceptance, and hope. So some of the things that can help you get to acceptance and hope after you started rebuilding yourself, your journey, is know your limitations, know your triggers. I had some amazing support systems in my life. My pastor was one of the most amazing, and it wasn't because she wasn't going anything. Actually, pastors go through the most, and they get hurt the most by the people that they are shepherding. But she was there for me. And I learned how to navigate my circle, who I need to break off. It didn't mean that I didn't love or didn't care for them. But I know that when I'm going through a traumatic experience, I can't have this person around because they speak too much negativity. Or people, and especially if you're a giver. So to all my givers out there, when you go through your grief journey and your grief events, give yourself some space away from people, because just like the giving tree, they'll pull until there's nothing left but a stump. You got to know when you're overwhelmed. What does it feel like? How do I react when I'm over? I snap when I'm overwhelmed. I'm short. I'm like short with my answers. I avoid certain people. And please, 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 don't be afraid of the stigmas associated with getting professional help. And you don't have to stick with the first, second, or third person that you get. Seek secondary, third opinions until you find the place that is right for you, but don't quit. And I remember 10 years ago, you couldn't tell me it wasn't okay to not be okay. But in my maturing, in my grief, in my loss, in my journey, I've learned it's okay not to be okay. You have that right to not be okay. And you may never take the turn from good to great. You may never be at 100% again. And that's okay. Eventually, you'll get to 98, 97, 96, 99. It's okay. Every day is a new day, and you don't owe anyone anything. You don't owe anyone any apologies. You don't owe anyone any explanations. Take your time, second by second, moment by moment, and deal with you. And so I'm super excited to have spent this time with you today. I know my time is up by now. Let's stay in touch. You can reach out to me at I am Lorinda Andujar, and I will share my information with you. And you can also find me through my sis Lakeisha. We'll be working on many more projects together. But if you have any questions, any comments, feel free to ask them.
Thank you, sis. Now, your slides weren't advanced, so these folks want them slides. I didn't want to interrupt because I was in like, okay. But yes, definitely get the slides to me, or you'll have access to everyone that's here so that you can get them. But I just want to say thank you for, number one, sharing your story. It's very triggering when we have to recount the death anniversaries of our loved ones. So thank you for sharing that about your beautiful mom. And thank you for being very transparent and saying yes, because this is not an easy subject at all to talk about. So thank you for saying yes.
My pleasure. I love you so much.
Love you too. Thank you, sis.
You're welcome.
That was good, y'all. So we're gonna make sure that y'all get the slides. I know for some of you, like, just grief within itself is a lot. And so we're really glad that you all are here and that you're sharing this time with us. So my next two speakers, all my speakers special, but they are really special to me because they really took the pain that they experienced and they really turned it into some amazing purposes. Like, yeah, they're gonna have to tell you themselves. So y'all sit tight. My next speaker's coming up next. What's up, good people?
Hey.
It has been a while, Rob, but it's good to see you.
You too. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this. This is awesome. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for saying yes. And my good sis, Sadija. Okay, we talk every day, y'all. Like, we always in text message. I'm forever her event planner. Don't nobody else come bid nothing for her, okay? That's me for life. Don't even try. Don't even try. But thank y'all both for saying yes. I love you both. Y'all are amazing, 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 amazing people. So, Rob, I'll start with you. Tell everyone who you are and what you do.
My name is Rob Ryder. I am also Lila's dad. She is and forever will be our firstborn. She was stillborn at 38 weeks on December 13th of 2017. And I am one of 3 co-founders of the Sad Dads Club. Sad Dads Club helps fellow bereaved fathers navigate life after loss by nurturing a supportive community and providing access to mental health services.
I love that. Y'all, first of all, the title alone is just so cute. Like, you can't help but kind of chuckle a little bit. Not like it's funny, but I mean, think about it. It's really, and you're really speaking to men. And I think sometimes y'all are like this lost group of people that we don't even think about need help. So thank you so much for pouring into dads like that.
Wow. Thank you.
And Sadija, come on through. Come on, sis.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to see Rob here. So connection is everything.
That part.
Connection. And it's crazy that we're all connected through the pain of grief, but we're all here to get, like, that's amazing. So yes. Thanks, Lakeisha, for putting this together and for having me. I'm Sadija A. Smiley. I'm Aviana's mom. And Aviana was stillborn at 36 weeks. Pregnant on November the 13th, 2003. And so from that, I've created Born Into Silence, which is a nonprofit organization based here in Maryland that serves the state's families who have experienced pregnancy loss, stillbirth, or miscarriage, or any array of pregnancy losses. And I'm excited to be here. It's weird to say excited when it comes to grief, but I really am, because I think it's a very isolating, situation and you feel pretty lonely and we get down. And yes, it is sad, but I'm excited for folks to know that they're not alone. There are some smiles found up under these tears and in connection. And so I'm happy to be in community with you guys today.
Yes, thank you. So I met Rob when I produced Sadija's first virtual event. And we've just stayed connected. Rob's been on several of them. We just stayed connected. And so it's about, like you say, the connection, but grief is something that brings everyone together. And how you all took, what could have just been a tragedy. Y'all could have just taken that and not done anything with it, but you decided to do something different. So Sadija, I'll start with you on this. Share your experience of loss and like how it impacted your family, like early on. Like, what was the most challenging aspect of that?
I think the most, well, when I lost Aviana, when Aviana died, that was my first introduction to grief. So I had not lost a family member or anybody before that. So that was huge for me personally and for my family, because she was the first death in the family. And so I think the biggest challenge really was getting the rest of my family to really understand that she existed. She's real. She's human. They hadn't yet met her. They hadn't seen her. They hadn't heard her voice, seen her eyes or anything. I was the main connection to her. So to try to explain to them, what she liked and how she was and her personality without them really knowing it was difficult. And then the last thing I'll add to that is just like, I didn't realize the grandparents element to that. So like my mom, while she was comforting me on the loss of my daughter, she also lost her granddaughter and was trying to recover pieces of her daughter myself that I was losing in this process. So it was real complicated.
I can't even form the words. That is so true. Like, all of the players in your family lost someone. As a grandmother, you lost your grandchild. As an aunt, you lost your niece or your nephew. So that I'm glad that you brought that up. Thank you for sharing that, Sadija. Rob, what's your take on that?
I mean, Sadija always puts things in a way where I'm like, yes, I don't want to talk about that more, but she already said it. So I'm going to try and add my unique perspective of being a father and the validation of, am I or aren't I a father? Because again, like your child being born, in the case of Sadija and I both had stillborn daughters, and they're born, but they don't come home with you. So like that's what I struggled with personally the most. And I felt like in the very beginning, I was not a father because I didn't have a living child. I thought that was what would define or would validate the title of being a mother or a father, was to have a living child. And so that for me was incredibly difficult. And not until the first Father's Day after Lila's death did I really turn a corner on how I viewed being her father. It was like a light switch moment.
Wow. So, Rob, let's think about even for men. And again, I think now it's more prevalent because there's organizations like yours that give men the space to talk about it. Most men, like I've heard through the process, the father is not even considered. And not because it's on purpose, but it's like you're the strong person. You hold everybody else. No one really even considers the struggle of, am I really a dad?
Yeah.
Like, did my child actually exist this way? Like, if you don't mind sharing, like, what kind of was that for you? And like, who supported you during that time?
As I always put it, I had the fortunate misfortune of having one of my best friends whom I've known longer than I haven't. He's been in my life for longer than he hasn't been in my life. And he and I were both living in the Portland, Maine area. And 11 months earlier, he's one of the 3 co-founders of Sad Dads Club, Jay Bella's dad. And his daughter was stillborn 11 months earlier. So we were in the same calendar year, 2017. He was January, I was December. I had never even heard the term stillbirth, stillborn before in my life. I obviously was aware of miscarriages, but figured because we knew they were expecting, Bella, their second child, any day now, that it was just a matter of like, baby's here, baby's home. And when I heard from him via text message that they lost the baby, my mind, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but I was like, did something like happen? Did the baby fall when it was born? Like, I couldn't conceptually, I didn't understand what could have happened, just because in my mind, with the exception of very few little, like, you know, medical mishaps, and I know now in saying and doing more work, I know it's not very few, it's more than there should be. But I had no clue how that could have happened. And when I was supporting him as best I could with seeing how hard it was on his family in the wake of losing Bella, to have that happen to me 11 months later, I immediately had support, and I immediately had somebody that I could go to, that I could get into a corner with and like spill it or say nothing and just get complete and total understanding, which was awesome to not have to explain myself.
Right.
And then he's the one who wished me a happy Father's Day on my first Father's Day. And I remember looking at the phone, and I tell this story often, of like the screen, and, you know, my thumbs are like hovering and they're starting to shake a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I just respond, I'm not a father. And he said, yes, you are. You're Lila's dad. You always will be. And that, like, very few times in my life have I ever had a light switch moment where literally my perspective entirely flipped, and it just never went back. I was like, oh my gosh. Anytime people would ask me, do you have any children? Just because they see me wearing a wedding ring, they see some gray in my hair. So it's a wildly personal question for the number of strangers who ask it to ask, but it's just it's seemingly an innocent question that can have a really loaded answer for any number of reasons from people at that stage of life. And I would always say no. And I would feel this physical tightening in my chest when I would say it. And I understand that for some people, it's really personal. You don't want to get into it. You don't want to let everybody in there. But for me, a lot of the validation and the coping has been like, I'm going to bring her up any chance I get. And after that moment on that text message where he reassured me and made me myself believe and know that I'm Lila's dad, that changed everything. How I presented, how I included her. And then that made me feel better. And I realized that's what I need. And that's most important in those moments. And that's not to make people feel uncomfortable. I take no joy in that, but that's to protect me and to honor her. And I need that more than I need somebody's temporary discomfort. And they get to learn a little something.
Hello. Yes. All of that. Right. Look, all of that, because if you are uncomfortable about those type of conversations, then I don't even want you in my space, because Lila's going to come up regardless. You know, Aviana is going to come up in any of our conversations. So I'm really glad. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's really helpful. You have someone in the chat that wants to list Sad Dad. So yes, make sure you tap in to her. Khadija, you said something really important. You said spaces for men and dads are necessary. And so I do love that, what Rob is doing. When you think about your journey, or like even the initial shock, I know that you have family, but who else besides family you feel like kind of supported you in this space? And what was that like for you? Because even as a mom, we know you're going to be upset. That's like cliche-ish, but it's different. It's a different type of grief.
Yeah, and I was, so when Aviana died, I was away at school. So I was in West Virginia, and all my family, I'm from Philly, so all my family was back home. So they were doing the best that they could from the location where they were.
Right.
But I think so. What really kind of comforted me, similar to Rob's story, is that the day I came home from the hospital after Aviana was delivered, my neighbor hung out the window and she saw me and my husband at the time coming home and was like, "Oh, you had the baby." And I just broke down. He took me in the house, sat down, started crying. But then she came through the door and he explained to her what happened. Mm-hmm. And she was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." She had lost her son, Tony Jr., at 6 months pregnant. And so that opened the door for us to have a conversation about like what it was like. And so I felt like Rob mentioned, I felt like, okay, I have somebody, like this is my battle buddy. And so now I can, share with her how I'm feeling. And she kind of helped me understand like what my body was going to do that they don't tell you about. And so that was really supportive for me. And that's, in all honesty, that's really all I had was her, my husband at the time, which as Rob and you mentioned too, like he was like the mouthpiece. I don't even know how he really processed and got through, because he did all the talking, all the coordinating, keeping people away, and all of that. So that was difficult. But I was thankful that she came over. I was hurt and upset at first when she, reached out, shouted out the window. Right. But when she came over, I was like, okay. So, things happen the way that they are supposed to. So I was grateful to have her support.
Right. Oh my gosh. Just think about the person on the other end of that comment. We just say whatever. You were pregnant. We see you come home. We ain't paying attention. Ain't no car seat. You know what I'm like? Just off the top of our head, hey, baby, and not knowing that you have had this amount of loss. I think, it just makes us kind of be more cognizant of the things that we say to people, even without knowing. Like, that's not something that you both probably shouted from the mountaintop, but you felt it in here because there was that void, there was that loss, that you have. But I think it just makes us be just a little bit more compassionate. Like, if I see she left, she was pregnant, she didn't come back. Okay, maybe it's something there. But again, through that, you were able to pull through. Y'all have a great relationship and those type of things. So I just love that you both have these supportive systems for you all. But let's talk about how you turn that pain into a purpose by starting these organizations that you have. So, Sadija, I'll start with you on that. Let's talk about, at what point did you feel like you needed to do this? Because this is a need. What both of you all have is a need. Like, at what point did you feel like, I have to do something with this pain, or I have to do something about this particular issue?
I'll be honest and say, at first I didn't want to do anything about it. I feel like, I was talking to people, and, as the conversation, like Rob mentioned, will come about the number of children, and what your family growing plans are. I would share that, my second daughter, our middle daughter, Cameron, was not our only daughter. And so I would explain to them what happened with Aviana, and people would start to connect me to women in their family, in their neighborhood. Can you talk to so-and-so? She just had a miscarriage. Can you talk to this person? And the more conversations, the more one-on-one conversations I had with the women, I just discovered that there really wasn't a space for us. I discovered how many of us were planning funerals for the very first time without having any background or understanding of like all this death planning. How many of us were like thrown into it? How many of us were not financially ready? I mean, who's planning to bury a baby when you're pregnant? And so not being financially ready. And then just the outside environment, like some things you don't really, like you mentioned, the compassion, like we don't think about those questions until you're in a situation where you have to, right? And so a lot of us were experiencing this and not really knowing what to do or how to respond. And our immediate family, as loving as they were, really didn't have the capacity to support us. And so the individual conversations, I was like, I got to get all these people together. Like, I'm sending all these text messages. Some of it was selfish. I'm like, I can't keep texting. Like, let's get together as a group and really talk about what we're experiencing and what we need. And so the needs came up from the women that I spoke with, the need to have community, the need to have financial support because they were taking time off of work and they didn't have money for the funeral and their bills were not being paid. The need for relational support because a lot of marriages and relationships ended not too long within that year after losing the baby. And so once I saw all of that and I was like, okay, who's going to step up and do this? And I kind of got like pushed out there like, well, you work in a nonprofit space, you. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to do this. And then I just was like, well, okay, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do this in Aviana's memory. So that's really what kind of fuels me even more, being able to be a support of other people and also being able to keep Aviana's legacy alive, making sure the world knows who she is and that she's existed and helping other parents do the same thing, for their babies. And so I didn't really choose it, but kind of got pushed out there, but I'm grateful. I'm happy. It's filling a need. We're providing the support that's necessary. And every day I want to quit, but I get up the next day and come back.
It's like that sometimes, like honestly. So yeah, thank you for sharing this, sis. I know that that's not always easy for you as a founder for something. But thank you for sharing that. Rob, is your story similar or you were just overjoyed?
It is certainly the most emotionally fatiguing, like, job. I shouldn't put in quotes, it is a job, like, but it's so personal and it's so deep that I completely sympathize and relate to just the weight that it is to carry, because you're in it so deeply at all times that it can be very overwhelming. And this gets into something entirely different about like taking space for yourself amidst doing this work with other people. But in terms of like the inspiration behind doing it, as I had mentioned, Jay, Bella's dad, who's a co-founder, the third co-founder, Chris, Izzy's dad. So the three of us, Jay and I were friends dating back from we met when we were 18. And so I'll be 40 in October. We've known each other. Our families know each other. I was the best man at his wedding. He stayed at my parents' house in DC before he could find housing when he was moving there for his job after college. And through our college, which was a small school, we heard through mutual friends that someone else in the area who was a few years behind us, she had a stillborn daughter, and we'd never met her husband. He hadn't gone to school with us, but they asked, just because they knew that Jay and I were in the area and we were open about our loss, if we would connect with him. And so the three of us, Chris, Jay, and I, started spending a lot of time together, and it became this comfortable and safe space where we could like unmask. Like, that's how Chris always puts it. He's just like, I could say everything or nothing, and it didn't matter because I knew that Jay and Rob, coming from Chris saying this, were going to understand. And that's how I felt when it came to Chris and Jay. And that's how Jay felt when it came to Chris and me. And it was just this like, whoa, we realized that when we were handed that bereavement packet in the hospital and everything I flipped through, which was like, beautiful flowers and like very soft colors and like, we're so sorry your baby died. Maybe didn't exactly say that, but something like it. It was like, nothing in here speaks to me. There's nothing that seems as though it's for me. I went to one support group, bless the hearts of the organizers. It just wasn't well attended. It fizzled out and it wasn't anything consistent or reliable. And so when we were kind of spending more and more time together, we're like, there are other guys out there, other dads who don't have anyone to connect with. They have nobody. We have each other. We are so lucky that we have this little universe of our own that we can come to and feel like, oh, just like you throw down a bag of rocks after carrying it around all day. It's like what it felt like. And so we said, let's start a website. We'll launch an Instagram. We'll put our 3 birth stories on the site. We'll encourage other dads to come in and share their stories with us. Well, just so there's like a place that there's static information, their stories, there are reflections shared that if a dad going through this can visit and check out. And when we launched the website on March 1st, 2022, and then it just started growing thanks to largely like other organizations and people we met. Like Sadija was one of the first people I got in touch with when she reached out to welcome, encourage me to attend their Lost Dads Open Hour. And they had this one-off Zoom that was designed for men because they recognized that there wasn't a space where men could come and be vulnerable and share their stories. And there were 3 hosts that had different losses. One, I think, had lost 8-month-old daughter. One had a stillbirth and one had recurring miscarriages. So you had these 3 dads that were all different loss experiences. So kind of bringing in a whole group of people that could feel like they have a place to relate. And everybody after that was like, when's the next one going to be? When's the next one? And it just planted the seed in my head. I was like, this is exactly what we want to be doing. We didn't even have a Zoom account at that point. So I hit up Sadija afterwards and was like, that was awesome. It was so like, I spoke during it and I felt so comfortable and was like, this is so in line with what we want to do. Can Sales and Sad Dads Club like partner on doing one? Everyone asked when the next one's be. I will be there to open up the Zoom room. And even if nobody shows up, because it's important that just something is there. Even if nobody uses it, it has to always be there. And so, I wish I'd logged the number of hours that we spent just like back and forth. And she lent so much of her expertise because we weren't a nonprofit at that point, and she had already established 1 year before. And so she, along with like other organizations I've met, but really like just that inspiration from other people doing the work already. I got off social media entirely when I lost Lila because it was so triggering for me to see pregnancy announcements and newborn photos. I didn't even realize there was this whole world of people creating a safe space on social media for parents who are navigating their grief and healing journeys. And so I'd say that the inspiration between what Jay, Chris, and I were able to give one another, and knowing that with the internet, we could provide that virtually to anyone, anywhere. And then being inspired by the work that organizations like Sadisha's were doing was like paving the way for how we wanted to create a safe, inclusive, and supportive space.
I love that, Rob. And I remember first meeting you when we did a run a show. You were like the most energetic. You were on time. You were on point. Like you wanted to be there. I could tell you wanted to be. I was telling Sadisha, like after we did our debriefing, I'm like, he's awesome.
Oh, thank you.
You asked questions. You wanted, because it just seemed like you, and I'm not gonna say just seemed like, I could tell you wanted to show up as your best self, not only for yourself, but for Sadisha and the cause that she was having. And so that makes a big difference in this world, that where we create spaces or safe spaces for other people, is that we always not only show up for ourselves, but for those that we partner and collaborate with, that we show up that way as well. So I just love what both of y'all have done. Sadisha, I'm down 10 toes. She has something amazing coming up that she'll talk about in a few minutes. But I want to end our session with just with this question. Grief within itself is overwhelming, but I think sometimes grief as a parent, like the loss of a child, sometimes just really is very, like it hits a special spot in my heart, because that's something that is totally like kind of not expected. You know, you feel like your kids are supposed to bury you and not the other way around. And so I want y'all to end with just sharing, a couple of things, like what advice would you give parents who may just be navigating this kind of loss? And I'll start with you, Rob, on that.
Even though you so graciously gave me these prompts ahead of time, I was thinking about this one. I was like, what do I say to sum it up? And I will try to be brief. And this, I don't want anything to ever sound like a lyric or to sound like just this empty thing, but like give yourself time and grace and don't be so hard on yourself. Because as Lorinda earlier, I hope I'm getting her name right, the grief recovery specialist, was saying, it's like, there's no amount of time that grief then expires. It's something you carry with you for the rest of your life. And triggers are going to emerge both predictably or unpredictably. And that doesn't change with time either. But I would also encourage that people find a space where they can talk about it, where they can write about it, where they just carve out a little time to acknowledge that this is like a life-changing and heartbreaking life event. And it's going to be something that will maybe highly likely change who you are. And grief doesn't go anywhere. And if you don't confront it, if you don't have a way to express it, it's going to compound. And this is not my medical expertise. This is my personal expertise of what I know happened in the beginning when I tried to do this instead of this, and talk about it and create a space. And crying is a release, and it's a very real one. And it's a sign of strength to be in touch with your emotions. And there is no shame, no harm, no weakness in feeling lost, feeling sad, or hopeless. Right. And there are a lot of people out there who are eager to connect with you. And I just urge anybody who's struggling, and as a parent, you're dealing with so much, and it's so much to carry. Like putting that grief on top of it it's gonna tip the scale. Right. So find your people, find your space, find your place where you can acknowledge it, talk about it, and you're never going to be your best self every moment of every day. Right. So don't hold yourself to that unrealistic standard.
Right. That's so true. I love that you said that. And think about, like, people laugh at this thing on Good Times when James died. But if you think about how Florida Evans reacted at the end, that is really sometimes how we go through grief. We're so strong for everybody. We putting things together, and then that anger pops up. And then before you know it, she broke down. Now, we laugh about it. We done made memes and reels and everything else about it. But it's a real experience, and it's really what happened. So thank you so much for sharing that, Rob. Sadisha, what would you tell someone?
Everything Rob said. And I think, and I would add and highlight. So I'd add, don't isolate. as easy as it is to pull back and get into your shell and stay away from everybody, that is a dangerous, dangerous place to be. So even if you have to take a few minutes, text somebody, let folks know, hey, if you don't hear from me in a day or 2 days, check on me. Make sure you stay connected with the community so they can check on you, because isolation is not good at all. Right. And then I would highlight connecting. Rob and I text a lot. Like we know and have feelings about what comes up, and we're working in this space together. So we deal with some people, that are also in this. And so we are able to bounce ideas off and kind of comfort and share with each other. So I would highlight the fact of connecting with other people who are on this journey. That's one thing, going back to if I had known now what I knew when Aviana died, I wish somebody would have paired me up with another parent that was on this journey that I could reach out to, or a couple others. So I would say get you a buddy, because you don't always have to say what's going on and how you feel when you're amongst people who are on that journey. Exactly. They kind of understand, right? Like if you're crying right now, then 5 minutes later you laughing, they're not looking at you like, yo, what's wrong with you? They're like, yeah, that's how it is. That's how it be. I remember I was like that, Right. They can recognize and validate what you're experiencing versus people who don't know. And they're like, oh, you crazy. They call, calling 911. Oh, you need to be put away, and not really understanding what you're experiencing, what you're going through. Exactly. Don't isolate. Maybe they don't have to call somebody. So you still have to check on yourself and make sure others are checking on you, so you don't get to a point where it does consume you. Right. And like Rob said, don't. I like when you did this. Instead of doing this, do this. Like just open and welcome it. Because if you do this, that thing gonna jump on your back, tackle you down. Like you a quarterback, and I'm telling you. So you want to make sure that you welcome it as much as possible.
Right. Thank y'all both so much. Sadija, tell everyone how they can get connected with you and what you have coming up next. And Rob, I want you to share as well.
Yeah, so y'all heard Lakeisha mention she is my forever event producer extraordinaire, coordinator, sister in events in life. Yes, Rob. So we have our gala coming up. We are celebrating 5 years as an official 501c3 organization in November of this year, right here in Silver Spring, Maryland. It's November the 22nd. If you're not local and you want to make a donation or sponsor another person to attend, please do that. You can go to our website at bornintosilence.org. All the gala information is there. You can follow us on social media at Born Into Silence. You can reach out to me at I am Sadija Smiley. And any mom or dads I send Rob's way. Any mom that is looking for support, please reach out to me and just really know you're not alone. But come on down, party with us, celebrate 5 years, the over 600 families that we've served, the events and community that we've created. We'd love to have you.
Yes, I'm excited. I can't wait. I'm flying out. I can't wait.
I've never seen Lakeisha in person. Okay, we've been working together for like 4 years. No, I cannot wait to wrap my arms around her. I've never seen her. So November, I'm going to get to see her in person.
Exactly. I'm excited. I cannot wait. Rob, what about you?
If you want to learn more about Sad Dads Club, we got our website, saddadsclub.com. One of, I would say, the cornerstones of our community is that we host a weekly Zoom session every Thursday. And this was, again, inspired and rooted. And the catalyst of it was when we partnered with sales and we were doing a once a month Zoom. And then it went to twice a month. And then now it's weekly. So it's just wild that we started doing it, together and once a month. And so we, let me see if, okay, let me try that again. Thank you, Sadija, for inspiring and facilitating the beginning of what is now a weekly Zoom series with Sad Dads Club. We do them at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. We're doing more in-person engagement opportunities. We have a retreat coming up. It is at capacity. We're hosting, it's our third retreat up here in Maine. There are going to be more and more. It's an incredible chance for us to connect in person, but we do also a lot of things on our private Discord channel, which to get access to that, we just ask that you attend one of our Zoom sessions so that you, the father coming in, you're sure that, okay, yes, this looks like something I want to be a part of right now. But really, bottom line of our community and organization is that our door is wide open and it stays open. If you decide to step in, you can step out if you need some space, and you can always walk right back in. Wow. It is a heavy thing to deal with on top of we're all adults, so we have things going on, other stressors in life. So we are just very open, inclusive, and want to make sure that we create a safe and supportive space for any dad out there who's suffering. So saddadsclub.com is the best place to get more info, or on Instagram, we post anything we got going on regionally there. That's at sad.dads.club.
Love it. Thank you both. I love you both so much. Thank y'all for taking time and just sharing your stories with all of us here. And I look forward to our next connection. But I'll be talking to you later on today, Sadisha. But yeah, but maybe Rob, I'll get to see you when I come. I don't know.
That would be awesome. I'm plotting trying to get down there for the event, because 5 years is no joke, and that's an awesome accomplishment. And I feel so fortunate to have the love and support from Sadisha. You've done so much for not only Sad Dads Club, but for me personally. So eternally grateful. Thank you. And thank you, Lakeisha, for always keeping things organized and inviting me to be part of these special things. I'm doing the thing where I talk too much now. So
no, yeah, okay. we love it. We love it. But thank y'all both for joining today.
Thank you very much, Lakeisha.
All right, y'all. That was good. That was good. Turning your pain into purpose. So next up, we're going to keep it moving right along. Next up, we have one of my business. I got two of my business besties on here today, y'all. But my first business bestie, I just happened to ask her the other day. I shared a post from the Willie Moore Jr. show, and it was talking about grief and forgiveness and grief. And so the lady said she had to go to her husband's grave and tell him that she forgave him. And it exploded. This post literally went viral, y'all. I am still getting comments. I am still getting likes, loves. It has gotten over 132,000 plays on this one clip. And I didn't realize how many of us were still dealing with forgiveness and anger as it relates to grief. So of course I'll reach out to the grief specialist. Okay. Like the anger specialist. And we're going to have a really great conversation about what that looks like between us. So y'all sit tight. My business bestie is about to hit this thing. What's up, sister?
Good afternoon, Lakeisha. Good afternoon, everyone. How are y'all today? How are you?
I am doing well. This is, this great work, and I thank you for saying yes.
For starters, I'm gonna say congratulations to you. You are putting on another stellar event today. I was like, as I've been watching, because I've been bouncing back and forth between Facebook and the link, and I've been watching, I'm just like, oh my goodness. I'm like, yeah, this is really good. It's bringing a lot of things to light and is allowing people to heal from all of the things that they've been going through, they've been experiencing with grief. So I commend you. God bless you for doing this, Lakeisha.
Thank you so much. I'm excited that you can join us. First, I want everybody to know who you are and what you do.
I'm Dr. Tyra Gardner. I am an anger management specialist. I'm also a psychotherapist, speaker, trainer. I do a plethora of things. I am certified in grief counseling as well as anger management and traumas. I'm specialized as a trauma trainer, actually. And so, yes, I have my hands is all into the mental health pot.
Yes. So I appreciate you being here so much. So we're going to get into this conversation because I, again, didn't realize that there were so many other people as myself who were struggling with forgiveness and grief. And so we know that anger within itself is a powerful emotion and grief. Like we're mad at the person for leaving us. We're mad that we didn't get to say the last thing. Like it's just a whole lot. Can you tell us, like, how does anger typically manifest during the grieving process?
So the way anger manifests during the grief process, number one, is because we are experiencing something called a loss of control, right? Grief challenges a person's sense of stability and control. Anger can emerge. Anger comes out as our defense mechanism, right? Because this is our way of coping with the feelings of vulnerability. Because number one, I don't know what's happening. Number two, and that's the second part, is the unanswered questions, right? When somebody is sick and in the hospital, okay, we pretty much like, all right, we start to prepare ourselves for the end result. But when we have untimely situations occurring, that's when it's something that's sudden and traumatic, that's basically taking that control from us, right? And so we really don't know where it's coming from. And then it's like we're finally asking ourselves, why did this happen? Why now? All of a sudden, any kind of trigger that we had or didn't know we had will manifest at that time because we don't know what's going on. And so when we don't know what's going on, that's called an uncomfortable feeling. And when we are feeling uncomfortable, what's the first thing we do? We lash out. We not gonna sit back and laugh like ha ha ha. I'm uncomfortable. Right. No, we gonna get mad. We gonna get angry. We just trying to figure out what's happening. And then the other piece is guilt, feeling guilty and blame. Mm-hmm. People start blaming themselves for or others for the loss, and leading to which leads to anger also. This can be part of a bargaining stage where people seek to make sense of loss by attributing blame, because believe it or not, we in a blame society.
Yeah.
Everybody look for somebody to put the pin on. If something happened to anybody, it's your fault. It's your fault. It's your fault. Now, I mean, we have to come to terms that it's not all the time other people's faults, right? We have to start being able to take the accountability, and one area that I will say, every time I think about anger, blame, grief, I think about during COVID. Yeah. And I think about, it was a lot of blame games going on during that time, right? Because a lot of people did not adhere to a lot of the rules that was being implemented. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people was like, if something happened to me, so-and-so did it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when you have that look, during that time, girl, look, it was bringing up a lot of questions because it was just like, well, if they was living by themselves and if this person wasn't doing or that person wasn't,
that part,
and then it just keeps leading to questions, would they still be here? And then that's when, and it's just like, do I get angry? Do I just say, maybe it was their time?
Yeah.
What was going, and it's just led to a lot of different things. So, so when you look at grief leading to anger, is loss of control. The loss of control of how did this happen? Yes. Everything in my life was fine, then this occurs.
Oh my gosh. You just listen. That within itself was just like a great explanation about like the whole gamut of emotions that you go through. I'll say for me, like, and this is part of one of the questions, I felt abandoned by my mom and my dad. I was like, why? Like, my mom was an alcoholic and she died from basically cirrhosis of the liver.
Okay.
And so it's like, you could have stopped drinking. You didn't stop drinking. And so this led to you dying. And now you've left me here. You didn't even give me a warning. Like, you didn't even say you were sick. Because my mom, I think, was sick for a while and just didn't say anything. She hid it.
Okay.
But not only that, you didn't even prepare me for how I was going to do life beyond that. So I'm mad at you. There was a long, long time that I was mad at her. Like, I harbored this unforgiveness, but didn't know that it was unforgiveness in that sense. So how, share a way like how individuals can begin to address those feelings of unforgiveness toward their loved ones.
And so with that, one of the things I suggest is writing a letter. Write a letter to your loved one, talking about the things that have been bothering you, whether it was during the time when they were here, leading up to their death, or starting from where you're at currently. you know, as we write letters to our loved ones, it does help with the healing process, because is allowing us that time to be able to share with them what we're, you know, our thoughts and our feelings, you know, and it's also giving you an outlet where you start to feel like your voice is being heard.
Right.
You know, with that also, journaling also helps, you know, keeping a journal, being able to, you know, get involved with physical activity like exercises and things like that.
Right.
You know, grief support groups, they help a lot also. And even if you could find a specialized grief support groups, like I heard the woman and the gentleman just speak about their organizations, you
Right.
know, and yeah, you know, I'm a big supporter of people having, you know, a supportive, like a niche when it comes to support groups, right?
Yes.
Because see, and the reason I say that is because all support groups aren't for everybody.
Nope.
Okay. And you have to go to an avenue that most suits you, right? Because they're not going to all provide the same information. A lot of people there are not going to provide the same experiences that you may be going through, the feelings, the emotions. You know, I think about I think her name was Sadija, was talking about how her neighbor ended up being a support out of nowhere. And it was just like, I know she was like, okay, well, you can sit down, you know, and had this conversation, because she finally, you know, even though she wasn't looking for it right at that moment, she ended up having somebody there that could understand what she was going through, you know. And with the father, you know, people don't even go to dads, you know. It's like when I think about that, and you know, I work with a lot of men, they don't care. That's the attitude that people take when it comes to the male perspective. And it's like, no, they do care. You got to have a conversation with them, you know.
Exactly.
But with that, support groups is always a good way. It's just finding a safe outlet for you during that time, you know. But my first go-to would be definitely with writing that letter, so that you're able to express yourself and get your feelings out.
Right. Yeah, I thank you for sharing that, because that was one of the things that my grief counselor told me. So grief was so bad for me. And Dr. Tyra can attest to this, y'all. We were supposed to do this last year. I had 4 deaths back to back, and it just damn near took me out. So I don't think I could give voice to it at that time. But that was one of the things, because this year I was like, okay, if I want to really heal, I have a therapist for the high functioning depression. But however, you know, grief was it was a whole
something different.
And it was
and it's like when I think about what you were experiencing as a friend, that was hard for me on my end, right? And the reason it was hard for me on my end, because I got 2 of my main people, 2 people who are instrumental in things that I do in my career, both experiencing the same thing at the same number of losses at the same time.
Lord.
So can you imagine? And it's just like, I got you on one end, I have the other person on the other end. Then I have one of my best friends. She going through it at the same. So when I look at last year, I had like 1, 2, 3, like 3, 4 people going through it at once. And it was just like from what, August? August through October, November. It was like, I watched all of you ladies going through the whole anger process. Like, I can't run my business. I can't work. I can't. And it was just like, you're trying to grieve, you're trying to work, you were pulled in all avenues. And so looking at this and watching y'all go through this, it was hard. You know, but look, we made it through.
We made it through.
As best we could. We made it through.
Exactly. We made it through. And you thank God, like Sadija was saying, like, we haven't met in person. I got to meet you and Dr. Van at My Mind Is My Business this year in person. 2 people who are very instrumental in my life. Like, I just text Dr. Van like on Monday. It was like, look, sis, I need you to go in a prayer closet somewhere. Your girl ain't good today. and she and y'all both hold me accountable, not only to say, oh, woo, you're like, okay, so what's going on? This is what she was like, I need you to go to the restroom, because she already knew her girl was crying. I need you to go to the restroom, fix your face, and we're gonna be all right. I'm gonna go in here and pray for you, but I still need you to know what
I mean, at the end of the day, we get it all figured out.
Yes, we gonna figure this out together. And you having support systems like that mean a lot, especially when you're going through so many deaths. When Dr. Van comes up here and talks about the role of spirituality in it, the lady wasn't even landed and lost a family member and still stayed for my event. And as a friend,
that was
go home.
I think we all was like, go home.
We
was all. It was home? Let me tell you, it was a whole tour. It was a whole tornado going on, and we try to send her back in the tornado. You go home.
We got
a whole
this.
Tornado.
Exactly.
And we're not laughing because of, we're laughing because it was when we say the skies opened up and things just went bonkers. It was like things went chaotic, and it was just like being able to pull it together. And it was just like, my heart went out to Dr. Van and her family during that time. God bless her for all that she's done, all that she is doing. And, that was tough. That was tough, but one thing we could say, God brought us through all of this.
And he did. He kept
and we was able to do what we had to do, and he kept us going, and we was able to push through, make adjustments, and do what we needed to do.
And pull together, for
because one grief we was not going to have was the grief of this event.
Right.
Because grief has
we was not doing that.
Look, because I heard Lorinda talking earlier about the different areas of grief. Grief comes in very many stages as well as many areas, because when you think about grief, the number one grief and anger that I have been dealing with a lot lately, girl, grief and friendships. Child, my phone, the grief and friendships has been on fire lately. At least for the past going on 9 months.
A lot of people are really, dealing with it. And then the anger and the forgiveness and that type of loss as well. Now, see, with that, most people are like, oh, well, that's more common. For us, when you think about the idea of forgiving somebody that has died, like, even in that post, because I sent that post to you, and I meant to send it to Dr. Van, because I definitely wanted her to touch on it in her segment as well. But most people are like, oh, that's stupid. That doesn't make sense. Forgiveness is not for the other person. It's for you. And it's like, you talking about a dead person. But then I'm saying to myself, like, you talking about a dead person. Like, it's like both sides of the game.
Right.
I feel like it's both necessary, but it can also be impossible, because sometimes what we look for in forgiveness is that person to affirm or to acknowledge that they have wronged us, and that there's an affirmation going forward that I've done this wrong. So what advice will you give someone, including your friend, who's struggling with the concept of forgiving someone who is deceased?
So when it comes to that, it's, I like to tell a lot of my clients, number one, we have to meet people where they're at. Right. And so when we look at people when they were alive, you have to meet them where they were at. Right. A lot of people, some people do have knew the right from wrong, knew the capabilities, knew what it was. Right. But at the same time, and this is if a person has done wrong to you. Right. With that is being able to sit down and just, analyze the events, the stages of events that happen throughout the relationships that you may have had, right? And as you sit down and analyze everything, right, and see how the narratives could have been changed, what could I said differently? What could I have done differently? To change what happened, because the thing is, we could sit down and go all through the mulberry bush to try to figure out what they could have did differently, right? But at the end of the day, we have to, look at what we could have done, even if what we could have done was walked away.
Yeah.
Because see, the thing is, we know what should have been done when they was here for people that have done stuff to us, but we just don't do it. Now, when it comes to people who we truly love that that may have passed on, and we're grieving their deaths, and it's like, like you were saying, like my father, he died at a young age. He died at 46, and he died of heart disease or whatever. And and I'm just like, what the hell? And like my father, he didn't have a, he drank, but he wasn't like that. He smoked or whatever. They ruled his, I think it was diabetic heart attack, because my father refused to take medication for all of that. And and it was just like a lot of little things that was going on with him, with health wise, when it came to that, right? But I was like pissed, like, dude, why didn't you just do what you were supposed to do? But I had to come to terms with one of the things that he always said: if anything ever happened to me and I ever got sick, ain't none of y'all taking care of me. And he was like, I am not that person.
Oh,
you know what I mean? So it was just making peace and coming to terms with knowing that, you know what, without preparing, he prepared me for that moment. By always saying it. Now, did he mean it? I had to take it as he meant it, because he, because eventually when it happened, because again, it was untimely. Who the hell expects to die at 46?
Right.
Okay. You know what I mean? So with that, it was just like, okay. So when it comes to, loved ones like parents, is sitting back and really thinking about what was going on that time in their life, right? Because sometimes people be going through things that we don't even realize. And the thing is, I know you said your mom, passed away, basically part of alcoholism, right? She wasn't going to sit down with her 20-year-old daughter and tell her what she going through. It's just like, the only thing they going to tell us is, don't do what I did.
Exactly.
Don't do what I did. And it's just being able to, understand that there were some issues, some things going on that was unresolved on her end, that people weren't talking about, because at the end of the day, when we think about therapy and we think about support groups and all that, we got to take it all the way back to the don't tell nobody our business.
I know that whole,
you know what I mean? And so when you look at that, our parents is a part of you. You tell them my business, I'm gonna knuckle you up. We gotta take it back to that era. And that's where we have to start saying, okay, you know what? I have to meet my parents where they're at. Lord knows they tried. They did what they could.
Right.
They did the best that they could with with the knowledge that they had. We lived in that don't tell society. They lived into that whole what was the other thing? Oh, take it to church. What the hell I'm gonna tell him for? He got more issues than I do. Talk about the pastor.
The pastor, right?
Because they, so so it's like you think about, so when you thinking about that,
right,
that's when we have to look, and that's when we have to start evaluating all of the resources that was around.
Exactly.
When we look at, reasons that our parents says, without putting blame.
Yeah.
Without putting blame, not blaming them.
Right.
For it, but just being able to acknowledge, okay, this is what happened.
Exactly.
Exactly. I don't understand, right? But I accept it at this point for me to be able to move forward, for me to be able to heal from this. What did I learn from this? And now just using what we know from them as a learning experience.
Exactly.
Like, okay, I know, I'm not going, I know the effects of alcoholism. I know the effects of alcoholism, eating too much cholesterol. I know the effects of, so it's like when it comes to stuff, it comes to a lot of the issues that we know cause death, is knowing, okay, this is what I'm not going to do. moving forward, because I understand what the end result's going to be. Right. You know, I mean, and acceptance is that's a whole conversation within itself, because people don't accept nothing, honey. Acceptance and blame, child, please. That's a whole nother, because people will point fingers till the cows come home.
Yep. It's everybody else's fault. Yep.
Yeah, everybody's fault, but theirs, and it's just like, and sometimes you don't want to be that person, and bring reality to certain situations because of how people feel. But sometimes we have to really sit down and look, and really look at the whole picture, not just part of the picture, the whole picture.
Right. Oh my gosh. Y'all, didn't I tell y'all why she and the next speaker always on my stuff? Because for one, they're going to give you the real, and it's going to be very practical. Because think about it, for those of you who are here, like, we say, oh, like for me, oh, my mom left me. She left me here. I feel abandoned. But also, like, okay, now I know. I learned more about the liver than I probably ever wanted to know.
But guess what? And that's what
it helped curb how I, consume alcohol, or when things were bad for me. Like, well, what did I do? What do I do when things, get bad for me? So I really appreciate you at the last minute saying yes.
Girl, you fine.
All of this good info, that people need, because I think it's more prevalent than we think. For us, me, you, Dr. Vance, some of the other people in our network that we work together, Tiffany, we draw strength and comfort from the things people talk to us about, but it's content for us. So now we get together and we're like, okay, we need to do this, or there's a need for this, in this space. So I really, of course, I love you to pieces.
Yes.
Thank you so much for saying yes. Tell everyone how they can get connected with you and what you have coming up.
Okay, so let's see. Right now, the only thing I have coming up currently is I do have the business owner support group that I have for business owners who just need that outlet, need a group to talk to about some of the things. We talk about different ideas and things going on. I do have a couple of events coming up in 2025, so I will be posting about them soon. And you can find me on Instagram at Anger Dr. Tyra. And if you, and I also have a podcast called Tyra's Just Saying. If you want to come on and promote your business, promote your nonprofit, or if there's anything that you want to get off your chest and want to talk about, just give me a DM at Anger Dr. Tyra. Thank you so much, Lakeisha, for having me on with you today.
Of course. Thank you. I appreciate you so much.
Awesome. God bless you. Take care, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
That was good, y'all. Oh my gosh. That was so good. So definitely go check out that post on my page. You will see the comments are bananas. It's a lot going on that post. But the train keep going, because my next biz best about to hit this stage, and y'all gonna love our conversation as well.
Hi.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good.
Okay, so I'm mad because you put me behind Tyra. What? Tyra, you still on here?
She in the chat.
You all in my business. Number one, you all in my stuff. Number one. And then number two, hit me up because I need to be on that podcast.
Right. Oh, definitely. Y'all too. Oh, y'all gonna go overtime.
Tyra doesn't know it, but she's coming to Wichita in December.
Oh, she don't know it yet?
She don't know that yet, but she's coming.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Tyra, we might as well go put your ticket in right now. I'm going. So you need to be there. Thank you so much, of course, for always saying yes. For always
say no to you.
But always throwing in, but also keeping me all together. And you've also been dealing with grief back to back this year as well. So before we get into that story, tell everybody who you are and what you do.
So I'm Dr. Michelle Van, and I am the evangelist of wellness. I am a wellness coach. And so I help women navigate through all of the icky things that happen in their life to get to the place that they really want to get to. We all struggle with different phases, specifically when we get to that empty nest syndrome, when we get to that place where we are looking at, I've done all of these things, and now what does my next season look like? So I really help women navigate to that next season.
And does so well on top of that. So yes, thank you so much again for saying yes. So we'll get right into like spirituality, mental health, grief, all of that, because you are well versed in all of that. But what do you think, or how does, as women of faith or people of faith, how does our spirituality or faith like influence how we initially respond to loss?
Yeah, and I think it's multi-layered, because sometimes we can, and I think Tyra kind of mentioned it, sometimes we can be angry with God. We can be angry because how can you be a good father and then you take away what I believed was my good? So there's that. Then there's the piece in which sometimes with, especially with us as charismatic sort of Christians, we can sometimes not know where to put our emotions. And so they come out in very spiritual ways. So we say things that are very spiritual. We say things that we believe we should be saying, even though they may not necessarily be what we feel. But we're not sure how to process. We're not sure how to go with. So we may have a service, especially in a Black church, where we have, a very charismatic funeral, and we may be shouting, or we may be crying, or we may be doing sorts of things. But it's really because we don't know where to put our emotions. Right. The other piece can be sometimes with our spiritual journey. Some people walk away from God during times of loss because they're not. They just can't process how God could, in their mind, do this to them.
Yes, and I think a lot of times as people of faith, those of us in church leadership, as not only a minister but a minister's wife, a lot of times when we go through, I'm a PK, but my father's deceased. When we go through, they like this, watching us. And if we respond any way that seems ungodly, or as if we have no faith, they jump all over us.
I would, over this last bit, when we went through our probably 45 days of losing 5 people.
Yes.
I had to tell people, look, I'm human. My call has nothing to do with my humanity.
Exactly.
And I think that's where we have to separate it. People have spiritual callings, but that does not negate their humanity. And so in my humanness, in my flesh, I'm sad. In my flesh, I'm angry. In my flesh, I still have to go through the grieving process. My spiritual call does not negate my human processing.
Right.
And that's the part that sometimes we forget.
Right. I think also too, when you look at holistically as someone who's in wellness, like holistically, grief is something that we must experience. Our faith is something that carries us through. But in the end, like, talk to us a little bit about like how those 2 to 3 things really have to occur in order for us to get to this place of holistic healing.
Yeah. So, so I use my faith as a tool to undergird my humanality, to undergird my feelings, to keep me, because otherwise, just like Lorinda was saying, and, and when her mom died, and when, she posted, those of us that were around, began to reach out to her, because it is one of those things where you can be angry and you begin to lash out at people. But then if I begin to go back and I say, God, I don't want to be bitter. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be at a place where I cause offense to other people because I am right now hurting. So help me to process help me and put people around me that will, one, I think, what was her name? Miss Smiley said, yeah, she said, I had people that would run interference. So I began to say, God, put people in my life that'll run interference so that I don't have to be offensive to people, so that I don't lash out. So I'm not, always showing what's going on. And there were people, and they'd be like, oh, yep, not right now.
Right.
Yep. Up. Move on over, because it wasn't the time. Because in my humanness, if I was not careful, I would show a side that didn't look godly, that didn't look spiritual, that didn't look, all of these things. And we would love to say, I prayed about it and I was totally healed. And that's not always the way it happens. We're not always zapped. And, there's no magic wand that says, I went to the altar, I lifted up my hands, the man, put the oil on my head, and boom, I was healed.
Right. No.
Yeah, it's not a magic trick.
No, not at all. I love the point that Khadijah brought out, but you really, hone in on it, of that running interference. Because sometimes you need that, not only just to save your witness, as my aunt likes to say, but to save your sanity as well, because there's so much that is going on. And don't be the strong person in your family.
Well, and the thing is that in our attempt to be spiritual, we say some really stupid things.
Yes.
And I think Lorinda mentioned that, we say things like they're in a better place, or, all of these things, when in this moment, my mind is racing, my thoughts are racing, my heart is perplexed, I may be hormonal, because some of us are in that time where, our hormones are doing some crazy stuff anyway.
Right.
You throw grief on top of it. And so I'm going through all of these things, and you say something out the side of your neck, thinking that you're being spiritual, and baby. Please stop talking
down.
Please stop talking to me.
Yes. It's going down.
I just need you to stop talking to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's horrible. I see. This is why I talk to this lady often. She understands and doesn't judge me. I can recall last year. So my stepfather had already died end of July, August. My brother was murdered in September. And I'm from a small town in Louisiana, Baptist church. So they have their ritual, not their routines, their way of doing things that I've kind of outgrown.
Right.
Since I have a better understanding, of a lot of things, Bible, Christian, all that. And so we're in the church, and I recall hearing one of the church mothers say to my brother's mother, like, well, he's in a better place, and I hope he didn't struggle. And it was like my head twisted, like, what in the what? Like, are you serious right now? Like, you did not just say that. And then there was another lady who was like recording my sister, who was on the last event, who is a social worker, who is licensed in mental health. She snapped, and they were all looking at her like, well, she needs to calm down. No, you catching a real live moment right here, homegirl. Because why would you want to record people in their worst moments?
Right.
In their worst moments.
And I think the angst now with social media, and I think this is about anything that happens in church. Not just funerals, but I think church as a whole, we shouldn't necessarily be recording. Record the word. Rest of the stuff doesn't need to be live for everybody to see, because out of context, you cannot understand what's happening.
True.
And I can be as spiritual as I want to, and I can, I can probably fill in the blanks, but I can watch something and without context, I have no way to know what's going on.
Right.
And then I can take that, because social media does what social media does. I take that, I blow it up, and now your pain is somebody else's meme.
Exactly.
And that's where we have to be so conscientious of what we do and how we do it, because we can be, we can create a whole nother scenario and a whole nother situation simply by, wanting to have this moment where I can be the first to get something out.
Exactly. I didn't even understand that. And I was just like, if this lady don't move from by my sister, like, I don't live here no more, so it don't even matter.
Right.
At this point, like,
I'm gonna show my whole behind, and it ain't gonna matter because I'm going home.
It's not gonna matter at this point. But I think I love that you said that. Like, there are certain moments that we should be sharing live as far as church. Like, for those who can't come, don't want, whatever your reason is. However, there are some moments. I look at clips of, ministers that some of us follow, don't like, whatever, but they say one piece, they share the clip, and they didn't jump down their throat. They didn't just say, she said something about marriage like this. But when you go watch the whole YouTube,
you have to watch it within context.
Exactly.
I think that's even with the word of God. We can take a piece of scripture, we can take a scripture, and we can take it out of context, and we can mess people up.
Yes.
And so we have to be very, very careful to really have fidelity to what it is that we're talking about, what it is that we're showing, what it is that we're doing, because people's lives are at stake.
Yes.
People's mental health is at stake.
Yes.
Because it takes just a little bit of nothing to, for you to think it's funny and to pull it out of context, put it on social media, and you can ruin someone's life. And we would love to believe that in the body of Christ, things like suicide and depression and mental health breakdowns and all of those things don't exist, but they do.
They do. Yes.
Pastors are committing suicide. Pastors' wives are committing suicide because they don't have an outlet. They don't have anybody to talk to. And so when I get into a place of worship, when I get into a place of when I need to walk through that forgiveness, who do I go to if I'm the leader?
Yes. That part.
And that becomes the hard struggle, is that because I'm a leader, because I'm so public, because people are looking to me for strength, I don't have that outlet. That's why my husband and I really have began to start doing work with pastors and pastors' wives, because it really is. I mean, like, where do you go?
Right.
Because I don't need my business in the street.
Right. Exactly. And like you said, take it out of context.
So that's been our heart of how do we help pastors and pastors' wives really have a place to, 1, retreat, and 2, get away, and 3, to just be able to have somebody else to go, I get it.
I get it. I totally get it. Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that, because I think a lot of what we miss, what is missing, are these safe spaces for people. Like, even for me, I share my story all the time about how, having this mental breakdown, but smiling every day, and inside I'm literally wanting to die. I'm literally like,
you share the part of your story that you're comfortable sharing, but there's still more to your story that you hold yourself, because even as a public figure, there's a piece in which you cannot let go.
Right.
Because you still are a place that you're doing business. You're still at a place that you are holding some things back. Right.
Right. And sometimes for your own sanity, so you don't get committed, you can't share what that is, so you need this space where you can go and say, y'all, don't call the people. However, this is where I'm at right now. Yeah. This is where I need to be. And I thank God for you and Tyra and the other ones, Sadisha's one as well, like this trusted tribe of women that I have, that I can say, even if I had suicidal ideations, that would pray me through it. Not just say prayer, but they're like, okay, now if it gets worse, you need to go somewhere. Like, y'all would literally probably jump on airplanes and be like, okay, I'm being Houston in 4 hours, 3 hours.
Where you at? Where
right.
at?
I'm about to pull up. I'm about to pull up
to your house.
Yeah, and vice versa, because there are no safe spaces, to talk about that. So I love that y'all are really doing that for pastors and their wives, because I think that they don't have any safe spaces. And I want to say this, and not to offend anyone else that's in leadership in church, but that's a distinct group of people that we lean on so heavily. Like Tyra just said, like, we run to the church to talk to the pastor. Well, hell, he got some more stuff going on over here that he can't even talk about.
Right. And like, even for us, my husband's mom passed away. My sister died within a couple of weeks.
Yep.
And so, there for that May and June and really kind of July, we were not very functionable. I mean, we still had to do our day-to-day stuff, but our minds were not clear. I mean, we're just kind of getting to where we can, feel like, okay, I might have a little bit of a grip on this, and some days are really good and some days are not so good. And, we can are ready to re-engage, but, it's just, I still have this job. I still have these functions, but I'm not capable of handling your stuff.
Yes.
And sometimes people don't realize that.
Right.
And it's not always because they are, because they're doing it on purpose, but people inherently are selfish.
Yes.
People inherently are selfish, and
yes.
They are all about looking at, what do I need? How are my needs being met? What's going on for me? Most people inherently are me.
Yep. That's so true. I love that we can have spaces or people that sometimes you don't even have to say much to. So Khadijah's not only a client, but she's a friend. We know where the lines are. So without saying anything to Khadijah, when I posted that my uncle passed, Khadijah automatically goes into friend mode, not client mode. She already knows that we're taking care of for her event up to a certain point. So she can give me lax. That's a conversation I don't have to have with her, basically. I don't have to say, okay, Khadijah, this weekend I have to go see about my family back home because my uncle just passed away.
Yeah.
But some people don't think like that. Like you said, they're inherently selfish. Okay, I got this event going on, in my space. I got this event going on. Whatever you got going on, baby, I'm sorry for you, but I need X, Y, and Z.
Get it done tomorrow.
Yeah. I need X, Y, and Z done. And I love what you said about baby, I can't do it right now. Listen.
And I have adopted in my life. I don't have the capacity for that right now. And I have, within my friend group, I have made it known that, sometimes, even though I am the strong friend, even though I am the person that a lot of people come to have conversation with, sometimes I don't have the capacity. So please, before you decide to dump, ask, hey, where are you at? Do you have capacity for this today? Do we have the ability to be able to talk? And so I appreciate when they have listened, and I can tell and who doesn't, when they have listened and they say, hey, I have something on my heart today. Do you have the capacity to hear this? And I have the ability to say yes or no.
Yes or no.
Say no. They'll say, okay, when would be a good time for me for us to meet back together? Hey, give me a couple of hours, or give me the day, and let's meet back at this time on, whatever. Right. So I think that's the other, the conversation that has to happen, the agreement that has to happen between people as friends or as groups, of to just be able to say, hey, I don't have the capacity.
Right.
Hey, I can't do this today. I love you, but I can't listen today.
Right.
I can hear you, but I can't process it.
Exactly. I can't show up for you how you will probably need me to show up for you in this moment, because
No, you're
I
going to
just
be very
can't.
sadly disappointed.
Right. I just can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
That's
have to
so
be
true.
real about that. And
Exactly.
just don't have the capacity to do that today.
Right. I love that you shared that. So as we close out, there is a comment that I do want you to address.
Okay.
From Miss Brenda, where she's saying, you know, when people don't have someone to turn to, they turn to drugs or they shut down. And she said, I thought you're supposed to take it to God. And I think that I love that she put that, because I think we need to have those conversations more. Mm-hmm. But I just want you to, because I've heard you talk about this a million times, and I love how you addressed it. But her comment was, I thought you were supposed to take it to God.
No one said that you weren't supposed to take it to God. Mm-hmm. I think the difference is the real thing is that sometimes that's a cop out. Sometimes to say, I'm going to take it to God is a cop out, because we don't really take it to God. We say that, but if we truly gave it to God, mm-hmm. then we wouldn't still be trying to fix it.
Yep.
So most of us truly haven't given it to God. Most of us truly are still trying to fix it ourselves through our God kind of resources.
Yep.
Okay. So we have things like prayer, and we have things like circles, and we have things like therapy, and we have all of these resources and all of these tools. But one of the things that happens is we don't truly give it to God because we like to be in control.
Yep. Yep.
We like to be in control of what's happening. We like to be in control of our own well-being. We like to be in control of how the things happen. And the one thing that we understand about God is he's not going to allow us to be in control of him at the same time.
Yeah.
Somebody got to let go of the wheel.
Right.
So if we truly give it to God, then we're not arbitrating it anymore. We're not trying to fix it anymore. We're not trying. And most of us can't really do that.
That's true. That's true. Yes, I love that. And I think a lot of times too, Dr. Van, people say, well, I gave it to God, but there's still work involved in you giving it to God through what he tells you to do. I can say, God, I put this men's event in your hands, but it's what sis got to do.
Yeah, you still have to plan,
to come out.
Structure, you still have to do all of those things. And to say, so I think, so that's one piece. I think that sometimes we use that as a cop out. But then I think the other piece is that as a person, I have to be willing to let go of the outcome.
Yes.
Because sometimes when God is taking us through process, sometimes when God is allowing us and taking us through seasons and growing us up and shaving off some things and sandpapering some corners and doing some things in our life, when the scripture talks about it from the perspective of he's buffeting us. In other words, he's doing some things. I think about it when you began to talk to me about this, I thought about how we go back to that parable of the potter.
Yes.
And how we are on that wheel, and when we're on that potter's wheel, we are turning, we're turning, and we're turning. But in that scenario, there was a mar in there. Well, many of us are marred. We have those scars, we have those scratches, we have those bumps, we have those cracks, because life has thrown us some horrible traumas.
Yes.
But the scripture tells us that he then made us again another.
Yep.
Because what we understand is that when I have those cracks, when I'm never actually the same. Mm-hmm. I'm not the same after I have the trauma. I'm not the same after I lost this person. I'm not the same.
Right.
I will never be the same.
Exactly.
I am made again another.
Exactly.
So the scars, the traumas, the cracks, the stuff that happened, the abuse, the drug addiction, all of those things, he balls them up and makes another wad so that I can start on that wheel again.
Yep.
And make me again a new vessel.
Exactly.
So I think as we think about how we navigate through this spiritually, we always say, like, I want to get back to where I was. Baby, you'll never be who you were again. You will never be that person again. You have grown. You have had trauma. You have had a new relationship with God. Hopefully, you have grown to pray in a way that you've never prayed before. You have grown to fast and to go into spaces and to travail with your Father in ways in which you've never done before.
Right.
All of those things make you again another.
Yep. Oh, thank you so much for just number one, dropping these nuggets. You ain't snatch edges. Too bad.
No, I didn't snatch it. But I do want to say this because somebody said something about affirmation. And sometimes we want to affirm and we want that person. So here's what I probably have never told anyone before. So my father, bio father, sperm donor, I had decided he had never been a part of my life for the most part. And I had decided that I was going to reconnect with him, or to connect with him. And so I went to do that. That particular day, my grandmother had Alzheimer's. She was 90, probably about 95 at this point, because she died when she was 96 or 94. So she was probably 93 at this time. So she was having a whole thing. She thought she lost her wallet, and it was just, and my grandma always had a grip of money. So we was like, oh shoot, she done lost her wallet. Dang, somebody's gripped up.
Right.
We find it. But by the time we find it, we have to leave because I need to go back. I've got a meeting. And so the next day my sister calls and says, hey, your dad is in the hospital. He had a heart attack. And then she calls me like 24 hours later and says, oh, by the way, he died. So I never got that chance to bridge that, to bring that together, to come together. And so there's always this place, there's always this hole that I have had in my space and in my heart, because that was a dad-size hole.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you think about affirmation and you say, hey, I want this person to affirm who I am, what I'm supposed to do, what it affected every piece of my life. I would, my husband and he would say, do this, do that, do that. You're not my dad. You can't tell me what to do. But it was the dad-sized hole that was yelling out.
Yeah.
Huh? So I think when we look at affirmation, when we look at, that person not being there, whether they died or whether our relationship was impaired, we can't repair it. It's irrevocably repairable. So when we think about that, we can have those spaces where we really do want that person to affirm us, but we will never get that. That is where we have to go to Holy Spirit.
Exactly.
Because nobody can fill those holes. Nobody can fill those valleys. Nobody can fill those spaces except for him, because they were designed for something else.
Yep. Yes. Okay. That's mic drop right there. Right there. Because that's a lot.
I sent you a link to a workbook.
Okay.
So that
I will make sure they get it.
So that is a workbook anybody here can get. If you go to that link, it is a grief workbook, spiritual therapy, navigating grief and mental health. It's just a little workbook.
Okay.
If you put in grief for the coupon code, it will be free to you. Otherwise, it's $5. But that is just a way. I offer workshops. I offer, we will have a retreat in December, which is what I was talking about when we first came on. We will have a retreat in December, taking flight. Our topic this year is taking flight. And Lakeisha's going to be there, and Chandra's going to be there, and Tyra's going to be there. She just don't know she's going to be there. And it's just a weekend to really begin to really unburden ourselves from some stuff that happened through the year, and really prepare for the next year. But you know, I'm here. I'm Coach. You can find me on every social media, Coach Fantastic. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. Reach out.
Yes, and I dropped the link in the chat. You all probably can copy and paste it, but also in my recap email, I'll make sure they get it, Dr. Van, with the coupon code. So thank you so much. I appreciate you being a part of this. Like, I was gonna do it without you, but I appreciate you.
Love you.
Love you too. All right, that was so good. Oh my gosh, the role of spirituality and grief. So one last panel. I'm excited about this panel as well. I get to reconnect, and I say reconnect. It ain't like we fell off, but I get to reconnect with one of my other clients that did an amazing international virtual event. Okay, like Homegirl had folks. When I say she had folks everywhere from all over this world on her event, and she's really about empowering women just to be them best, their best selves. I just love Leslie. Like, we've always stayed connected even after that. So I'm excited to have this talk with her and Lorinda about like rediscovering joy after there's been a loss. Well, hello, my sister.
Woo! Wow. This has been absolutely amazing. If you can see my notes, I don't know if you can see, but I have been taking such incredible notes. First of all, let me just say thank you to you for, oh no, my eyes are going to bother me. Thank you for putting this amazing summit together.
Thank you.
And, you know, when I heard the title, Good Grief, I was like, okay, like this is interesting, but anything that you're doing and you want me to be a part of, I'm there. But you know, I need to get some tissue. But in my notes, I want to start off with Lorinda, where she talked about, you know, the death of her mom.
Mm-hmm.
The notes that I took from her is, and I've said this before, that I don't look at women as broken, but she gave me the key word. She says that you're not broken, you're just healed, you just hurting, right? And that was profound.
Yes.
So Lorinda, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And then you know, your two amazing nonprofits, from Rob, Lilia's dad, and I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, Sadija,
Yes.
with sales, two incredible organizations. And then Dr. Tyra went into the reason why we do so many things is because of the loss of control. That was so powerful. And then you talked about grief and friendship, and back to not telling people our business, right?
Yes.
So some of us from some generations, we so know that too well.
Yes.
And then Dr. Van just really brought it on home. And what I loved about what she just said is, before you dump, ask if you can dump, right? And a lot of us, we want to hold space for people, we want to hold space for one another, but not taking into consideration ourselves.
Yes.
So I just appreciate this panel, all of the expertise that everybody was able to bring. Lakeisha, you're doing your thing. You know I love you. Continue doing your thing. And so as I get into it, just real quickly, just let me introduce myself, as Lakeisha mentioned. The name of my company is Mosaic Inc., where, as we're talking about grief, right, it represents certain fragments of women's experiences. And if we talk about grief, it's about women not being silenced and overlooked. That's huge for me. And so in that, what I am able to do, and I just love what I do, is to give women the space of empowerment and through their stories, because that's what we heard today. We heard all these incredible stories, right? And so for us for me to give the space for women to share their untold stories, suppressed emotions, for them to come together, create powerful and beautiful narratives of resilience and healing. So this is how Mosaic empowers women to reclaim their voices and transform their grief into strength. So that's who I am.
Thank you, Leslie. Look, we always been connected, but yes, and you're gonna be on more things as well. Yes, thank you so much, Lorinda. For the people who may have just joined, tell them who you are and what you do.
Well, my name is Lorinda Andujar. I am a certified grief recovery specialist. I am a multi-book author. I'm working on my 8th book project. I am a mom. I'm a certified John Maxwell speaker and coach, and overall lover of people. And I am the black sheep, and I am so happy to be breaking generational curses.
Yes, I love that. I love that. I love that. You both have touched on, and Leslie just touched on, like the capacity piece that Dr. Van talked about. One of my most amazing friends, she's in the chat. I call her LB, but Lakia Brandenburg, she is an amazing host and MC, and we met through someone else. But our grief of our mothers, the loss of our mothers, brought us together. And she makes space for me quite often. I love when we talk about rediscovering joy and purpose, how she says to me, tell me about your mom. Tell me about your dad. Tell me about your stepdad. Like, those things make me, number one, feel like she cares. And that my person is important to her too, because I'm able to open up to her about who they were and how they, affected me in my life. And it brings a little bit of joy to know, like, somebody really, they care, they're listening. So Leslie, I put this first question to you, like, after you experience loss and you find like your person, how do you think you begin to open up, like, to the possibility of joy again? Because, in grief, we're like, this person is gone and I don't want to, some of us are like, I don't want to live anymore. I don't have anything to live for. Like, how do you begin to open yourself up to joy?
So as I was getting ready for this panel, I kind of went through all my timeline of lost, right? And I'm going to talk about 2 loss. I'm talking about the loss of my grandmother. I lost her when I was 19. And what happened with her is she was sick in the hospital. My mother said, you don't want to go to the hospital, you don't want to see her. So that means I never saw her. And so at 19, and I think Lorinda may have touched on this, where she mentioned she realized she had an addictive personality. So for me, at 19, I was acting out in a kind of way that it took me decades to realize that that's what I was doing from the loss of my grandmother. I was very close to my grandmother. So when I started Mosaic, I knew that when I started Mosaic, it was homage to my grandmother, because she is a pinnacle in our family. And there's a tagline under Mosaic that says, sisters inspiring others. The S, the I, and the O, you put that together, that's my grandmother's nickname, which is Sayo. So when I started Mosaic back in 2018, I always knew it was because of my grandmother, but here's what I never did. I never talked about her story. Only about a year ago have I started, because if you go on my website now, you'll see a picture of her, you'll see her story. So as you talked about, that person wanted to know about, tell me about your mother, tell me about this person. I didn't feel like, although I knew that Mosaic, the foundation, is my grandmother, somehow I was not able to verbalize that for other people to come along with me in that journey.
Yes.
So that's how, for me, how I have rediscovered the joy, the love that I have for my grandmother, everything that she has done for me to continue that over and over again. And I hope that others will find permission in whatever kind of way. You may not want to start a company, it may be something else, but in whatever kind of way, to continue that legacy. Because of her, When I meet with women and I talk about doing their books and we're doing different things, legacy is always coming up because of her. So legacy is huge for me because as we leave here, we're talking about grief, right? As we leave here, we want to leave something so that other generations, like we're leaving those breadcrumbs, we're leaving those incredible things for other generations. So that's how I rediscover joy is now actually, and it takes courage, because as I started Mosaic back in 2018, I said that I knew what everything meant. Everybody else didn't know what everything meant, right? So, it takes courage to start to do that. So thank you for that question.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that you said that. And I think one thing, ladies, that none of us really, it's probably back of mind for us because we deal in grief and we talk about it, is even in the grief that we journey through, part of that grief is one day we're going to leave here too.
Exactly.
And we're going to leave somebody with a very, I hate to say burden, because grief doesn't really have to be a burden. We wear it, and we wear it because of the love we have for that person. But I could possibly leave my children and my grandchildren with the grief of me no longer being here. So sometimes that's a part of what we're struggling with to our own mortality.
Yeah.
Is that is what we're dealing with too. So yes, thank you for sharing that, Leslie. I really appreciate you sharing that.
You're welcome.
Lorinda, what about you? Like, you share your story with us, which was amazing, and I watched you the whole time try to maintain, but at some point saying, you know what, this is just what this is, and you're gonna get this raw and real.
Exactly. You know what? But there was something that you two ladies said in the beginning when about telling your family member's story and allowing you to reminisce about them. So it didn't click until now how instrumental this little 3 words are. Say their name.
That part.
So, remember Sandra Bland? Say their name. Remember Alton Sterling? Say their name. And it's not because their name is just, is this magical switch. It's the fact that it makes them human. And they're not just a memory. Every piece of joy, every tear that we've cried, every piece of excitement that we've had about that person comes with the saying of their name. So when somebody comes and says, your mom died, how are you dealing with Mrs. Rose's death? That hits different than saying, I'm sorry, your mom died. Because she's just a number at that point. So the ability to listen to someone say her name or say his name and not break down, that gives you joy, because now you're holding on to memories. You're holding on to joy. You're holding on to experiences. And I love the fact that you talked about legacy, because, and I've heard this said so much, pain, birthing, purpose, but we really don't wrap our arms around that. You think about every experience that you had that was a major catalyst for change. It came out of pain. It came out of discomfort. It came out of just getting a little, just something got up under our skin. So everything that we do is about the legacy. Even it took for, I've seen people and I always said, you know what, that'll never be my family, when it came to families fighting over possessions and what's mine and who gets to put their name on the obituary. And what that did for me, it actually had me write a whole story about grief, about what people go through behind the doors. Because when you get to the service, you see how everything came together, but you don't get to see the person, oh, I am the executor of this account. Everything's going to go through me. You have no say in this, and the grief that it causes. So I love the fact that you built Mosaic out of the legacy, out of the love, out of the memories of your grandmother. And so I think that's beautiful. And if we allow people to go through the pain and birth their purpose out of that, they will experience joy, because they say this was not for naught. I've learned and I'm helping my community. I'm pouring back in my community. I'm teaching other people that this is not the stuff that you do during funerals, because we're already grieving and we don't want somebody else to lose their life or their sanity because we didn't do things the right way. And that brings me joy, saying that, you know what, not that this pain wasn't for naught. And so, you know, saying their names and letting their legacy live on, that legacy. When I started, everything was legacy of love. I wanted to leave a legacy of love.
Yes.
How the best way to do that than to pour yourself and the memories of others out in our community. So those are the things that have brought me joy. They're tough, but Lord, they brought me joy.
Right. Oh my God. Thank you for sharing that. I love that you brought that up. I will tell you with LB, it's not even, the big piece is that she remembers. The big piece is that she will ask, you know, about my mom, her name, but she remembers little things that I shared. Didn't you say your mom used to do blah, blah, blah? Like that to me is like, not only are you this someone I could talk to about grief and these different things, but also you remember.
Yes.
You remember these things about my mom and my dad and my stepdad and my brother, like all of these things. And I was like, girlfriend, I don't know how you keep up with everybody that I lost over these years that we've been friends, but it makes a big difference. And for me, it began to help me, along with everybody else who was pouring into me, find like purpose for this loss. Again, this whole summit was supposed to have been last year. We were supposed to do this on last year, and there was no way I could do it. God really needed to walk me through some things. I started losing family members in July. And then my stepdad was July. My brother was September. My uncle was October. And then my nephew was in December. So there were some things God wanted me to kind of walk through and really get an understanding about grief. So I would have a different purpose than probably originally what I thought this conference or this summit should be about. So Lorinda, I'll start with you. How did you find new purpose after loss? Like, what came up for you, and then how did it connect you to other people?
So how did I find new purpose? Because you know what, loss makes you reevaluate everything. It makes you reevaluate who you have in your circle, why you allowed them to treat you that way, what they were, because the distraction stopped you from doing. That is what the loss did for me and moving me forward and discovering my purpose. It made me, you know, when I saw somebody grieving, it made me stop and talk to people that I normally wouldn't talk to. It made me stop and say, you know what? I don't know what to say. I can't tell you what you're going through, but I can listen. If you want to call me and cry and let me sit on the phone and say nothing, I will do that for you. If you want to talk about it, I can do that too. If you want to just go and sit on the beach, I'll come and pick you up and take you where you need to go. Have you eaten? My humanity started coming out after loss. And, you know, we all think that we're such great people until we're inside of a loss. And that losses connect us to each other. But it also taught me to make sure that I wasn't trauma bonding with people and getting people stuck in the muck. So that's what this journey has taught me, and in my connections. And so when I see somebody starting a trauma bond, it taught me to teach my community, whoa. I get where you're at. I may not understand what you're going through right now, but I don't think that's the healthiest way. Have you thought about counseling? I do. And then I started getting my friends that are counselors, and I'm like, I know this really great counselor. I would talk to them about my problems and everything. They're very confidential. It changed the way that I built connections and the people that I connected to each other as well. So that's kind of a loaded question, because it's full, it's fruitful, but but that's, my take on it. Hopefully I answered it like you.
No, you did. And I think for me, after the loss of both parents, you get this kind of I don't careness. Like at this point, I can't give no, you know what. Like, I lost two of the most important people in my life. I ain't got time for no other kind of foolishness.
Exactly.
Like, I'm not taking it. I'm not tolerating it. It's out my life. Like, I don't even have to deal with it, because at this point, like, it just helped me see, like, these were two of the most important people in my life. I didn't know one was leaving. One I knew was going to transition. However, you coming with foolishness, or these people in my circle, snakes, you got to go. I ain't got time. No, we moving around.
To add on that really quick, that moment right there. So my ex, I got divorced right shortly after my mom passed away. Got my divorce finalized. And the tipping point on the scale for me was, he was like, you never let me do anything. You never let me do anything. You never asked. You such a strong woman. Okay. I asked him to drive me to go where my mother was when they told me my mom passed away. And because somebody was there that he did not like, he didn't want to take me. So the one moment in my life that you said, I never asked you for anything, the moment that I dared to ask you, the most critical moment in my life, showed me who was really there for me. And death and loss will remove the scales from our eyes, because we give chance after chance after chance to people and that don't value our energy, our time, or what we bring to the table.
They don't. That's so true. I'm really sorry that happened, and thank you for sharing that with us. Leslie, what would you say brought you new purpose, after loss, and then how did that help you connect with others?
So the loss I'm gonna talk about is a little bit different, because I did hear that somebody did mention, and I think it was Lorinda that talked about loss of a job. So I have two situations where I talk about loss of a job. The first one was I got laid off from a job 2 days after I found out I was pregnant. And so that kept me in a depression. Back then, I didn't know it was depression. That kept me in a depression for about 3 months. I stayed home, didn't look for another job, didn't do nothing. My bonus mom called me and said, have you been to the doctor? I said, no. She says, why not? You're pregnant. I said, I lost my job. She said, you're not the first person lost their job. I was not keeping the main thing right with that. The second time that happened, it was when I decided to transition to a new job, which was about 5 years ago. But at that time, I'd been at that job for about 15 years. And at that time, probably for 2 years, I'd gained weight. Just a lot of different things now that I look back was different. And I remember one day, just out of the blue, I said, oh my God, I'm grieving that job. And so I was like, wow, when we talk about grief, we usually associate with someone. But Lorinda, I didn't write down your exact words when you mentioned, yes, you talked about what is like valuable to you. That's what you talked about earlier. And I'd been at that job for 15 years. You build relationships, you have whatever, but I knew it was time for me to transition and go somewhere else, because it was my decision to leave. So I didn't think that with my decision to leave, I would go through the emotional trauma of grief that I went through. Yeah. So for me, after I realized, oh my God, I'm grieving. I'm going through that process. And it took me back to when I lost the job. And now those two things connected. And I really want to say within the last 5 years is one where I really start to connect with the grief of my grandmother, start to connect about grief of the job, really and truly trying to bring all those things together. And then especially with the loss of the jobs, I want to say to reconnect with your identity and your purpose. Yes. Because when I think back of 2 days after I found out I was pregnant on a Wednesday, I got let go on a Friday. Like, okay, like what do I do? And I am in a state for 3 months and I am pregnant, right? Wow. That's one. The other one, I decide to transition. Why am I going through this? I'm the one that decided to leave.
Right.
But we realize that there's always a bigger purpose. And it goes back to my grandmother again, that at 6 years old, I would be at that lady's feet. And no matter what that lady would say, like whatever she would say is gospel to me. Right. Yeah. And so even developing Mosaic with the purpose of her death and keep that moving forward, for me, that to me just constantly reconnects me with who I am and the greater purpose. And as we talk about, yes, we will transition. During the pandemic, I got together 9 women and we wrote the book, International Day of the Girl, A Walk in Our Life, the Pandemic Edition. The reason, that was Holy Spirit. The reason, I was on the couch one day and he said, this is what you're doing. The reason for that is we have never gone through a pandemic before. Right. This happened 100 years ago. And I wanted Black women to come together and share their experiences in this book. So if it's 100 years from now, somebody can read great grandmama, how she felt during this time. Yes. And all of that is the reconnecting to identity and purpose. So I hope I answered your question. Yes. Because, you know, those are different points in my life that I can, like, wow, like you're grieving. And even during the pandemic, we went through, right? And even Dr. Van said, we will never be who we were. We'll never be who we were. And the pandemic, especially during that time, we did not know what to expect. Right. And that's why it was so important for me to historicalize or crystallize or memorialize women's feelings of what they were going through during that time. So that's the question.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Number one, I love that you shared that, and I love the legacy piece that you both speak about, but also our footprint, a digital footprint of a time and space where, you know, God forbid if we ever have to go through something like that again, but it's documented. It is something that you know, speaks about who you were at that time, and that it's something timeless that someone can have. So thank you so much for, you know, sharing that, because that's really, really important to me, I think, for our legacy. To end us out, I want y'all to give some advice to someone who may feel like, because of this loss, whatever loss it is, we focus on grief from the loss of a person, but grief from anything. What advice would you give someone who feels like they'll never experience joy again? Like, joy is not a part of their lives anymore. And I'll start with you, Lorinda, on that. Share that piece of advice and then tell people how they can get connected.
I want them to reflect, because, you know, joy comes in the morning. It don't come one time. It comes always, because we're always going through something. There's always, I want you to think back to a moment where you thought you weren't going to come out and you came out. What happened in that moment to make you come out of those? And I want you just to focus on those moments step by step, day by day, because there always is going to be a challenge. Just like the devil, it's always going to be a devil, but there's always going to be joy if we look at it the right way. If we pull out what we need to pull out of it. Don't give up on yourself, because I can tell you there were so many times I say, God, how am I going to get out of this? How am I going to survive? How am I going to get up? And I got up. I don't know how I got up, but I didn't give up on myself. Just the same way that you don't give up on other people, do not give up on yourself, because you owe it to yourself. You don't owe it to anybody else. And I think that's the problem sometimes with grief. We owe an experience or an explanation to why we didn't grieve a certain way or stop grieving a certain time or something else. You don't owe any explanation, anything to anyone. Do it your way, day by day, and you will come out. It may not seem like it today, but I want you to think about, I guarantee each one of us on this call, short term, can look at our 5 fingers and talk about a grief event that we got out of that we never thought we'd see the end of. And remember, whether it's losing a loved one, losing a job, losing some money, losing a house, a toxic relationship, you name it, getting called a racial slur for the very first time, getting your very first no, you got through it.
Exactly.
Get you a support system and you will continue to get through it, because you don't have to do it alone. And that's where we get stuck.
Yes.
So
yes.
if you want to reach out to me, you can hit me up on Facebook. I am Lorinda Andujar on Facebook, LinkedIn, all of my social media platforms, or you can reach out to me through my 501c3, which is Heal the City, Inc., or She Blinked LLC. All of my, or if you pick up any of my books, all of my contact numbers, contact information are in the back of my books on Barnes & Noble and Amazon, as well as my phone number when we're talking about grief. It's a Google number now. I ain't stupid, but you can reach out to me. Look, I've had the grief of being stalked, so I take some precautions. But just reach out to me, and we will, and I'll be there. Or you can reach out to my sister Lakeisha. She know where to find me.
Exactly. Always. Thank you, sis. Leslie.
So I like to talk about giving yourself grace, and I like to talk about wins. And you know, as Lorinda was talking, it doesn't have to look the way that you may think it needs to look. And when I talk about wins, even if you just got up out of bed, that's a win.
Yes.
Maybe today you took a shower, you know, because of, you know, how you've been feeling. Like I said, I was in a depressed mode for 3 months. So whatever those wins look like for you, celebrate that. Because tomorrow, as Lorinda said, joy comes in the morning. So that it's just about getting to the next day. So give yourself grace. Celebrate whatever the win is. If it's a win for you, it's a win for us, and we are celebrating you. But celebrate that. And then the last thing I want to leave us is, I love acronyms, right? And I know that our vice president talked about hope, and use this word hope as an acronym: healing over your painful experiences. Whatever that experience is for you, you're seeking healing for it. So that's what I just want to leave everybody with. Celebrate your wins. Please give yourself grace. Don't be so hard on you. And a support system. So always seek out a support system as well. But learn, really and truly, really learn to give yourself grace. It is one second at a time.
Yes.
It is 1 second at a time.
Absolutely.
Right? So let's not even get to a day. Let's just do it incrementally. And once you can move forward in that, that's it. Oh, and then you can find me on I have a new YouTube channel that I started. It's called Mosaic Sparks. We are in Japan, Australia, UK, South Korea. It's been very exciting. And tomorrow I will be interviewing a 30-year Air Force veteran that she retired after 30 years, and she's getting ready to, and she is also still serving by being a coach and a mentor. So Mosaic Sparks is where you can find me on my YouTube channel. I am on all socials. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and just like everybody said, Lakeisha can find me. So you can't find me. So I just want to say I am grateful. Thank you to Lakeisha for always listening, right? Because as she said, this could have been last year, but Holy Spirit was moving with her. So one, thank you for answering the call of doing this. Thank you for having these amazing panelists, speakers on here to pour. Because when we come on a panel like this, that's what we're doing. We're pouring. And I know I'm always talking about that one, right? Because it's one at a time. I know that there's one woman, one man, one child, one whomever that have gained value from this. So thank you to all the incredible speakers, and Lakeisha, thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies, so much. I love you both. I am so appreciative to y'all saying yes. Trust me, there are many more coming. But thank y'all both.
You are so amazing. Keep your heart and your head up, because baby, you are changing. You are changing the narrative on grief, and you keep being a disruptor, ma'am. Tear them walls down, and let you people got to heal. Come on, let's go. Thank you.
Yes,
I love you.
Yes, I love you too. Thank y'all both.
Bye-bye.
All right, y'all. I mean, it was so good. I enjoyed it. I hope you all enjoyed it. This was an amazing, amazing, amazing conference. Again, it was something that was supposed to have been done last year. But I had to be obedient to what God wanted me to do and what He wanted me to do in that time. And so I'm just excited that you all are here. Before y'all dip out, I definitely want y'all to know about Hope Talks. That is our next virtual event that will be happening next month for Suicide Prevention Week. Next month is Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month. But we are doing something in the evenings for about 3 days where we're going to change the narrative on suicide. We need to start talking more about what that is, and having these very candid conversations about suicide, how it affects us. So I definitely want you all to tap into this one. This is a free event. Also, my event in November, it is in person. Some of the ladies you see here going to be back. They will be pouring into our men. I saw a gap in the mental health space for men. And so now I just want to pour into them. This event is going to be very powerful. It is going to be very supportive and nurturing for our men. And so you'll get information about that as well. In our recap email on all my socials, you've seen it too. Another organization that I support is Black People Die by Suicide too. They are a very integral part of getting the message out about those who, number one, may have died by suicide or attempt or survivors of a suicide attempt. So they're actually hosting a webinar on next month. You have that in your workbook. And if you didn't get the link for the workbook, you will get it. I'll send out a recap email where you can get it and you can register for their event that they have coming up. And I just met this amazing lady, Joy, who is doing a Grief Is virtual retreat. If you're on my mailing list, you will get the information about this. Registration hasn't opened as of yet, but it will be opening. So this is definitely something I want you to tap into, and we support each other. So if somebody else is hosting something that is parallel to what I'm doing, I want to share it as well. And last but not least, Shanti is one of my speakers. She's been on a ton of my events. She actually has a grief journal that you all can purchase from her, and it is in the workbook as well, so that you can, start doing those things that the speakers mentioned that you should do when you're going through grief, the things that you should talk about, like to get out, to share. So all the information is in the workbook, but it'll also be in the recap email that I send to you all. So I didn't want to leave this stream without saying that. And just to say thank y'all to just pouring into me, being a part of this event, being here. This means a lot that you all are here. You could have been anywhere else on a Friday. For National Grief Awareness Day, you could have been anywhere else, but you chose to be here with me. So thank you all so, so much. Make sure that you all stay connected to me. You can follow me on all my socials at Lakeisha M. Mosley. I respond to my own DMs. I respond to my own emails, all of that. So thank y'all so much for being here, and y'all enjoy your Friday.